O God, author of all wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, we ask thy guidance in our consultations to the end that truth and justice may prevail in all of our judgments. Amen. We're starting this morning with two very special presentations, and I actually get to leave my seat to make these happen, so I'm just going to go over to the podium. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, distinguished guests. We're going to be talking this morning a little bit about heritage. And in 2008, Council adopted the Calgary Heritage Strategy with three main principles in mind: identification, protection, and management of Calgary's historic resources. This strategy calls upon the city to serve as a role model for the creative and adaptive reuse of city-owned historic resources and excellence in maintenance and restoration. As a result of the city's commitment to act as a leader, between 2008 and 2010, I've got some numbers for you. 138 sites in Calgary have been researched, evaluated, and added to the inventory of evaluated historic resources, and 19 sites have been legally protected as municipal historic resources, with more expected to be added by the end of this year. As a city, we've made huge strides in recognizing the value that heritage preservation plays in creating great communities, and I think citizens recognize that value too. Our heritage planners work with numerous community-based groups, one of which is the Calgary Heritage Initiative. The city and volunteers work together to preserve and celebrate heritage. The Calgary Heritage Initiative Society, and I see some of them here today, has nominated the city for 2 awards that we're receiving today. Their enthusiasm demonstrates the appreciation and significance that Calgarians place on heritage. So I particularly want to thank Cynthia Clausen, the president of the Calgary Heritage Initiative Society, for her group's ongoing support. Additionally, I'd like to thank the Calgary Heritage Authority, another group of volunteers, for their ongoing work to preserve and promote heritage throughout Calgary. So today, with the support of these 2 groups, the City of Calgary is being recognized for its ongoing commitment to heritage preservation. For the first award, we are joined by Harry Maisonneuve, Heritage Canada Foundation Board of Governors, Alberta, to present an honourable mention for the Prince of Wales Prize for Municipal Heritage Leadership. At this time, I'd like to call Mr. Maisonneuve forward to bring remarks and to make the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Nenshi, for welcoming me here today. Distinguished guests, friends, the Heritage Canada Foundation believes that places are the cornerstones of communities' identity and a sense of place. One of our mottos is historic places are for people, but more importantly, historic places really need people to keep them alive. And ultimately, heritage is local. Communities like yours set a great example of what commitment and visionary citizens can do. The Heritage Canada Foundation developed the National Awards program back in the 1970s. The goal remains the same: to celebrate excellent conservation work being done by individuals, groups, and municipalities all across the country, while at the same time raising awareness of the value of heritage preservation. In keeping with the Prince of Wales' commitment to architecture, environment, and inner-city renewal, he agreed to lend his title to the creation in 1999 of a Heritage Canada Foundation Prize to be awarded annually to the government of a municipality which has demonstrated a strong and sustained commitment to the conservation of its historic places. The local government must have a record of supporting heritage preservation through such means as regulation, policies, funding, and exemplary stewardship. The nomination must provide evidence that heritage properties in the given municipality have improved over a period of time. This year, and only for the second time this award was created, the jury made a unanimous decision to award an honorable mention to the City of Calgary, where efforts to develop policies and plans that favor the conservation of the city's built heritage have been ongoing for 30 years. On behalf of the Heritage Canada Foundation, I extend congratulations to you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, and the people of Calgary for your commitment to maintaining and integrating heritage buildings in your official municipal plans, and for igniting and supporting the passion for its continued preservation. It gives me great pleasure to present this award to you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your remarks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maisonneuve, for those wonderful remarks. Receipt of this award represents a significant accomplishment for the City of Calgary, and I am very, very proud to recognize and congratulate the entire team on this achievement. We have lots more work to do, but we have made an excellent start. For the second award, the City has been recognized by the Alberta Historical Resources Foundation, and I'd like to invite Alderman Carra forward to bring his remarks from the award ceremony last week, at which he accepted the award on behalf of the City.
Thank you, Your Worship. On November 26th, I had the pleasure of accepting the Alberta Historical Resources Foundation Municipal Heritage Preservation Award on behalf of the City of Calgary. When I accepted this award, it was a personal honor as well, and I acknowledge two things that I'd like to acknowledge here today. Number one, growing up in Inglewood, a community that is significant in its heritage, in its heritage inventory and its heritage contribution to the City of Calgary, I know that it was citizen volunteers who rose up against official city plans and protected that heritage. And recently I've been involved with the Project Brewery to protect and acknowledge the significance of that site. And that's another citizen volunteer driven event. And so I want to just say thank you to the citizen volunteers who throughout the province put heritage on the agenda, have our governments respond to that, and make it the issue that it needs to be. So thank you to the volunteers. The second thing I want to acknowledge is the explicit admonishment that this award represents. His Worship just said we have more work to do. We do have more work. So it's good to get a pat on the back, but it's good to get a pat on the back to acknowledge the fact that we do have a lot more work to do and to put heritage firmly on the map. And I'll do that as a counselor here, and I will definitely do my best to share that passion with my colleagues. So it is my honor. I also want to acknowledge the Calgary Heritage Initiative, which is one of the many citizen groups that are doing amazing things for heritage in the city. And so it is my honor to present this award today to my fellow colleagues on council, to the passionate heritage volunteers of Calgary and the province, and to the people of Calgary for their continued support to preserving and promoting Calgary's rich heritage. And I look forward to our continued work, celebrating our unique history in diverse and meaningful ways. Thank you very much.
So I don't lose it. Thanks so much, Alderman Carra. And on behalf of City Council and of all Calgarians, I want to again thank all of you who are involved in heritage preservation in Calgary. Heritage is an incredibly important part of creating and maintaining a great city. As Alderman Carra said, we have much work to do, but the volunteers and all of the citizens of Calgary who have started us along this path have done amazing work for us and for future generations. So thank you, and let's keep working. All right, we now will continue on with the formal part of our agenda, starting with the confirmation of the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes I like to skip over question period. I don't know why that is. Questions for question period. Seeing none, we'll get to the confirmation of the agenda. And I've got a number of items here that I have notes that we want to add as items of urgent business, so I'll accept those now. Alderman Pincott?
Thank you. I would like to add an item of urgent business that is related to personnel.
In camera?
It does not need to be an in-camera item.
Does not need to be in camera. All right, so that's on the city auditor, Alderman Pincott. So the motion then is to add an item of urgent business. We'll add it as 9.1, appointment of the city auditor. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Lowe, thank you. On that motion, are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well. Other items of urgent business? All right. So I have a list of them myself. So we will go through adding PBS 2010-01, approval of the council calendar as 9.2. Do I have a mover for that? Thanks, Alderman Pincott. Alderman Keating seconding. On that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well, carried. Item C 2010-75, which was sent by separate cover on Friday, further reductions to the 2011 operating budget. I'd like to add that as 9.3. Thanks, Alderman Colley-Urquhart. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Hodges. On that one, are we agreed? Agreed. Any opposed? All right. That one's carried. We've got a few more here. C 2010-76 we'll add as 9.4. Motions arising from the 2011 budget. Scope of work, again, that was sent to you all on Friday. So do I have a mover for that one? Thanks, Alderman Chabot, Alderman Hodges. On that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? Okay. FCS 3 from FCS here. FCS 2010-27, reserve for future capital. Alderman Lowe, Alderman Colley-Urquhart. On that one, are we agreed? All right. FCS 2010-28, amendment of community sustainability reserve for public art. Alderman Lowe, Alderman Colley-Urquhart. Again, on that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? All right. FCS 2010-29, status of outstanding motions, December 2010. Alderman McLeod, you're jumping in there. Alderman Lowe, seconding. On that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? All right. And what do we got here? LAS 2010-81, proposed disposition of closed roads to the CMLC. Alderman Farrell. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Marr. And on that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? Okay. Oh, we've got one more. Do you have an in-camera one? Oh, did I? I'm sorry. On that last one, are we agreed? Any opposed? I thought I heard it. Is Alderman Chabot? Okay, sorry, you're hiding behind the screen today. I can't see you there. Alderman Chabot was opposed to that one. Sorry about that, Alderman Chabot. So then one in camera, Alderman Lowe, LAS 2010-82, proposed acquisition, residual, my favorite area, residual to sub-area 2A. On that one, are we agreed? Any opposed? Okay. So that is that. Okay. That takes us then to tabled reports. Oh, Madam Clerk, did I just add this as 9.1 instead of 5.1? I think I did. We do have to approve the agenda as amended. Thank you, Alderman Stevenson. It must be Monday morning or something. So given that I made a little mistake, let's put council calendar as 5.1 and then the others under section 9, urgent business. So with that amendment, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Alderman Stevenson, seconded Alderman Marr. Are we agreed? Agreed. Any opposed? Okay, very well. So that then takes us to item 5.1, which is the council calendar. And we have two motions before us on this one. So can I get a mover, please? Thanks, Alderman Colley-Urquhart. Seconded, Alderman Stevenson. Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Worship. At our audit subcommittee, we had some discussion about some amendments, and I'm just wondering if Madam Clerk was able to submit or has copies of the amendments as presented during
Your Worship, that was the urgent business which was added, PBS 2010-01, from the Procedure Bylaw Subcommittee, and it is in front of Council now.
Oh, is that what's currently being distributed, Madam Clerk? Thank you for that. So, Mr. Chairman, or Your Worship, there's a number of amendments that were proposed, and council now has them before them, I will be more than happy to discuss some of the amendments that were proposed, one of which I had suggested, which was switching LPT and UNE during Calgary Stampede, as I'm chairing LPT, and now I'm on the Stampede board, and we'll have many obligations during that week. So hopefully council can support that amendment.
Okay, so just give me the dates on that, Alderman Chabot, and we'll take these all together.
Okay, so that would have been July 13th, having UNE on July 13th as opposed to July the 20th, and having LPT on July the 20th as opposed to July 13th.
Oh, okay, great.
There are a number of other amendments, but I'll let the other members of council who made those amendments speak to those. Thank you, Your Worship.
Shall we take them separately, Alderman Chabot, or shall we try to do them all as a package? I'm going to read them to you now, and then we'll get them up on the screen. There were two just handed to me. So the two that Alderman Chabot has proposed is, number one, move the LPT meeting from July 13th to July 20th. Two, move the UNA building from July 20th to July 13th. Alderman Pincott, do you have one for me?
Yeah, I had asked that the audit committee meeting of April be moved to earlier, and I wasn't at the meeting, but is it to switch with the GPT? Okay, so I'll move that the April audit and gas, power, and telecommunications meetings be switched.
So you're moving the audit committee from the April 21 to April 14?
Your Worship,
Yes.
we haven't had a vote on the last amendment. But
I was going to try and take them all together and then vote them separately.
Then it should just be one mover,
Yeah.
one seconder
Okay.
on the whole thing.
Notice why I ignored him when he said he was moving it.
Okay.
I'm just listening to him for information now. So, so the audit committee being moved from the 21st to the 14th, and GPT being moved from the 14th to the 21st. Okay, and then I have one, which is to move the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee from June the 2nd to May the 26th. Okay. That's just moving that one up by 1 week. So those 5 in total. Now I will take, well, actually, are there any others? Okay, so in that case, I'll take a motion to move those 5.
Worship, happy to move those. And there was another mention, I don't know if it needs to be on the council calendar, had to do with the subcommittee that's been formed, the procedural bylaw subcommittee. And I believe that the projected date, although I don't know that it needs to be on this calendar, Madam Clerk.
It does not?
Okay, thank you.
Actually, Madam Clerk, I have a question, which is council strategic planning sessions that are booked for January, February, and March, do they need to be on this calendar?
Actually, January wasn't booked. There is a PAC meeting on the 4th of January, and I believe you're going to get a request to carry on with that meeting. There is one for February 1st, and the final report of this committee was destined for that meeting.
I understand there is meant to be one added for January the 17th for full council as well. It's the Monday in between our council meetings.
We haven't heard that, Your Worship, so
All right.
it would have to come here to council as part of, it's not usually on the council calendar.
Maybe you can add that one too, Alderman Chabot, to your little package.
Happy to do that, Your Worship,
Thank you.
as well as all the other amendments
There's
that have
all
been
the others.
mentioned.
So that's six in total. I don't think we'll need, unless we have a call to take them separately, we can do them all together. Do I have a seconder for that? Thanks, Alderman Keating. All right, Alderman Hodges. This is on the, actually, let's move the amendment first. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, so on the amendment, those 6 changes then, are we agreed? Any opposed? All right, Alderman Hodges.
Yeah, I just want to clarify something, Your Worship, with Madam Clerk, possibly. We have a couple of attachments to this report, 5.1. One is called Appendix 1, Order of Business and Meetings. And then later on, we have regular public hearing and a listing of what occurs there. Is this an indication that we'll have 2 separate agendas like this for each meeting? Or that at the agenda, when the agenda's on in early each month, say February 7th, all of these items will be listed at that council meeting?
Your Worship, this is the practice now. I believe there's another motion coming up from Alderman Lowe, which is in recommendation 2 of the committee, that will talk about your public hearing piece. But right now, this is the existing practice, just right out of the bylaw, and there's no proposal to change it now. That's just an addendum in your bylaw, so that you know what typically comes up at a public hearing.
I was thinking of looking at it that way, but I wasn't sure if there weren't some changes implied. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Alderman Stevenson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm being asked to be out of the province on AUMA business for the strategic planning on the 1st of February. I'm just wondering if that creates a problem or that I'm not there.
Well, I mean, of course, we'd be losing your wisdom and and helpful thoughts. It would be handy if we could actually have all members of council at that particular event. I'm going to suggest that we leave it there for now, and then we might do some inter-office communication to see if we can find a date in early February that works for everyone.
Thank you.
Alderman Lowe?
Well, Your Worship, I guess procedurally I've been kind of listening to this when, in fact, didn't we have a report from if somebody just stood up and moved the recommendations of the report, it would have been there?
Yes, I apologize. I didn't have the report in my hand when we started this. So what we have on the floor at the moment is the moved by Alderman Colley Urquhart are 2 original recommendations.
Well, I think there should have been 4 in total. Well, I'm getting confused here whether we're talking about the changes to because the one recommendation had to do with the order of meetings, the other had to do with amendments to the calendar, Your Worship. Actually, and it's and I guess there's the third thing I can just add.
One moment. So what I'm looking at are the recommendations on 5.1 in your agenda, recommendations 1 and 2, which is that council adopt the 2011 council calendar, which we just amended, and that it give 3 readings to bylaw 54M 2010. And I know what you want to do is you want to move the stuff in the report that I didn't have when we started.
Yeah.
So if you, what's the right way to do this?
Well, if I think you have the 4 amendments to the calendar, or sorry, the 5 amendments to the calendar. You can do that, and then what I can do, or Alderman Keating, who's chairing this, can do is move the remainder of the recommendations.
Okay.
Because one of the things is that it forwarded it to this meeting, so there was a series of things here, Your Worship.
Yes. Well, it's on the agenda for the meeting anyway, so so recommendation number 3 is a bit moot, but recommendation number 2 is still sitting out there.
So I'll move recommendation 2.
Okay. Why don't we take the one that's on the floor now, then I'll recognize you to move recommendation 2.
Sure.
All right. So anything else on the calendar itself? So then on the recommendation to adopt the 2011 council calendar as amended. Anyone else? Okay. On the recommendation to adopt the calendar as amended, are we agreed?
Agreed.
All right. Now, that then takes us to recommendation number 2 in the original motion, which Alderman Colley Urquhart put on the floor, but I'm not sure that we meant to do that, which is to give 3 readings to bylaw 54M 2010. Perfect. Done. Thank you. So then, Alderman Lowe.
Then I'll move recommendation 2 of the subcommittee's report. And it's the request of the Secretary of Planning Commission to order the public hearing items so the housekeeping and routine matters are scheduled at the first of the agenda, which gives the general public who want to attend the rest of the public hearing an opportunity monitoring Shaw or whomever to get in here and to deal with it. There was considerable discussion. I should let Alderman Keating speak to this.
Sure.
I'm not here, am I? There was considerable discussion about the idea of putting the public hearing off to the evening. Your Worship, what you do then is you automatically then move the balance of the public hearing to Tuesday afternoon, because as you're aware, our public hearings can be of indeterminable length, and so the consensus at committee, and Alderman Keating can correct me if I'm wrong, was that we leave the way we've structured our meetings broadly as is, but that we ask that the Secretary of Planning Commission to move the housekeeping items, if you will, to the front end of the public hearing, which gives administration and the public an opportunity to assemble themselves for the balance of it. And I think that reflects very good use of council time, very good use of administration time, and affords the public an opportunity to get themselves in here if they're not here already. I don't know of a better way to handle it, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Do we have a seconder for that? Alderman Keating, thank you. Anyone else on that one? Alderman Hodges, did you want to speak on that? All right. Before I call Alderman Lowe to close, may I? Okay, I'm not a fan of this idea. In fact, I imagine this makes it worse, because the initial goal was to make it more predictable and easier for the public to determine when they were speaking on issues. I don't like doing it at 9:30 in the morning. I'd like to reassess that at the PAC meeting in January. However, I think making it a completely indeterminate start time for the issues that people might be interested in is actually much worse. I would actually rather start with the big controversial issues so people know that'll happen right at 9:30. So I think in attempting to solve the problem, this particular recommendation makes it worse, and I won't be supporting it for that reason. Alderman Lowe to close.
Well, to close, and there was considerable discussion exactly around your point, Your Worship. However, it's one thing to get down here for 9:30 in the morning. It's another thing to get down here for 11 o'clock. Traffic, parking, availability, transit, et cetera, just plus the opportunity to watch the proceedings at council and know when to be here, rather than to show up here, as so many people do, Your Worship, at 9:30 in the morning, at 9:30 at night, they're still sitting here, which is the thing we're trying to avoid. If it doesn't work, so be it. We can revisit it. The fear that the committee expressed quite plainly was that to do it otherwise could have a significant gap in the middle of the day when neither council was productive, administration was not productive, and we'd be waiting to start up at 5 o'clock in the evening, knowing we were just simply forcing the meeting over into the next day and compounding the issue. So my suggestion is take a shot at this, see if it doesn't work, then we can come back to it. With respect to January the 4th, Your Worship, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of Alderman Keating, and I apologize, is one of the first things we decided at this was to hive the governance piece off and refer that to PAC with a view of structuring PAC as it was originally intended to be and give PAC the governance piece. And I think that's appropriate, and the procedural bylaw subcommittee focuses its attention on the procedural bylaw, and that's exactly what we've done, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe.
Speaker, microphone.
The piece on PAC is already in PAC's mandate, so there was no referral on that. It was just on this piece.
Makes good sense. Thanks, Madam.
I used the word referral inadvisedly, Madam Clerk.
I was just about to call the vote. Did you say something, Alderman Collier-Perk?
No, I couldn't hear about it.
Oh. All right, so then on recommendation 2, that the Secretary of CPC be requested to order public hearing items so that housekeeping and routine matters are scheduled first on the agenda. Are we agreed? Any opposed? Opposed. Alderman Collier-Card, Alderman Carra, and me. Oh, we need a roll call, please.
Alderman Marr.
Yes.
Alderman Pincott.
Yes.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yes.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Alderman Chabot.
No.
Alderman Collier-Card.
No.
Alderman Demong.
No.
Alderman Farrell.
No.
Alderman Hodges. Alderman Jones.
Yes.
Alderman Keating.
Yes.
Alderman Lowe. Alderman McLeod.
No.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
Lost, Your Worship.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Alderman Lowe, for that. I think that takes us through item 5.1. Is there any motions arising on the council calendar issue? Okay, very well then. That then takes us to items from administration, the city manager's report, and we will start with E 2010-28, the Calgary Planning Commission bylaw. Alderman Lowe.
Your Worship, I'll move the recommendations of the report. That was my notice of motion that started this process underway. I'm satisfied in dealing closely with administration on this as we've gone through it. There's still work to be done to develop the appropriate protocols so that the referrals can be made, or the references, Madam Clerk, the references can be made more correctly, but I think we've achieved a good balance in this one.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Alderman Chabot?
Yeah, briefly, Your Worship. I was just waiting for some comments across the room on that one. Your Worship, I'll gladly support it. I guess the only objection I have to it is the fact that it's going to go to my committee, so it'll be subject to some great debate, I'm sure. Thank you, Your Worship.
Oh, and we do love our great debates, Alderman Chabot. So anyone else on these recommendations, which are to file the report and abandon the proposed bylaw, before I call on Alderman Lowe to close? Alderman Lowe to close?
Closed, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. On E 2010-28 and the 3 administration recommendations, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. All right, then. That takes us to C 2010-73, Assessment Review Board budgeted versus actual costs for 2010. Can I have someone move the recommendations in the report, please? Oh, thanks, Alderman Marr. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Lowe? Alderman Marr? Okay, you love them? Alderman Chabot?
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're on 2010-73, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Just a couple of questions, Your Worship. While I was very pleased to see that the projected positive variance is going to be $1 million, I think it's somewhat ambiguous, at least at this point, not knowing exactly what the cost implications are going to be on some of these more contentious appeals. But I am curious about something that's referenced in here. It says additional costs would be incurred predominantly after the 2010 year was complete. This would be on page 2 of 2 at the very top, where it talks about some additional expenditures that we might be incurring. And I'm just wondering why it is that we would be incurring some of those costs, specifically in regards to an applicant's appeal. Should we not be able to do some cost recovery if we're successful on our appeal?
Madam Clerk?
Your Worship, if I may just answer from here. The issue now is we have at present 61 appeals from the CARB. Most of them are from the CARBs, which are the senior boards, which have the provincial government member on, which are waiting for leave at Queen's Bench. We have very strict regulations in the Municipal Government Act as to what Queen's Bench can grant leave on. Should they grant leave on any of those appeals, then we will have to have a board solicitor there in order to rationalize the board's decision. Planning or assessment will have a solicitor there from the City of Calgary, and there will be one from the applicant too. Those would be the additional costs. And there may be an opportunity to request costs back, but so far we haven't had much success with that through the board itself.
Thank you very much for that response, Madam Clerk. I was kind of curious about that. I would have thought that we could have been granted leave on some of these appeals on that basis, but if it's indeterminate, then there's no point in making reference to it, and at this point, till such time as we have further evidence. So I'll sit down on that point, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Any other discussion on the motion to receive this report for information? Seeing none, on the recommendation to receive this report for information, are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well then. C 2010-74 then, Airport Trail Easement Agreement Deferral Request. Can I have someone move that we receive this report? Thank you, Alderman Stevenson. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Marr. Anything to say on this, Alderman Stevenson?
Just that this deferral allows the report to be coming back after we have the work that's underway right now done, which will be coming to Council in January. So, thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. Alderman Chabot?
Your Worship, I'm just curious as to why the direction is to return directly back to Council as opposed to Land Use Planning and Transportation, where the public would have an opportunity to provide input.
Mr. Logan?
Your Worship, My recollection was when council discussed this overall report on November 8th, the decision was made to come straight to council with that report.
That this report, which is now a deferral,
Yep.
come back directly to council now. Is there anything that would prevent us from redirecting it from council but rather than go to committee now at this point, being it's now before us, we're now dealing with it, and what the motion is before us is to defer it. So you've essentially responded to us.
Mm-hmm.
Could we not now give direction for it to go to land use planning and transportation? Madam Clerk.
With respect to C 2010-74, I assume that you could. Madam Clerk, I don't know, I'd look for direction from her. Our thought was that this motion had come from council back in May of this year, I guess, and we wanted to amalgamate all these different factors into a single report rather than bringing council a series of individual factors.
Your Worship, thank you, Mr. Logan.
Thank
so
you.
Respectfully, while I appreciate that council gave direction for it to come back here initially, it is before us now, and the request is that it be deferred to a later date. And as such, being as the report is now before us, I believe it's back in our hands to give direction as to where it would be appropriately dealt with. And on that basis, Your Worship, I would like to make an additional recommendation or an amendment that it actually be directed to go to land use planning and transportation as opposed to directly to council.
So the amendment on the floor then is to, in number 2, change the word council to land use planning and transportation. Still 2011 March, Alderman Chabot?
That would be the 16th of March then, Your Worship, based
Okay.
on the current council calendar.
Thank you, and Alderman Marr is seconding that. So on the amendment to change it from council to land use planning and transportation, Alderman Lowe?
Well, Your Worship, it's always difficult to follow the bouncing ball on this one. But it seems to me that the council, at its last discussion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Logan, but your report on the hard questions is coming directly to council, is it not?
Yes, Your Worship. The report that we are working on to bring forward to you in January will encompass the proposed, what we would recommend as a design, the financing package, and so forth. That within that report would be an identification of the right-of-way required. Mm-hmm. Depending on the go forward from that point, we may need a subsequent report to identify a long-term right-of-way, or we may be moving forward well before March on trying to execute that agreement sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And I guess there's my difficulty, Your Worship, is that we've got reports all over the place dancing around in this, and harking back to some language used, if we were going to use a way of making sure that we would avoid the April 1st report or communications with the airport authority, spreading it out this way is exactly the way to do that. So I would far rather, I'm not going to support the sending this off to a committee, which would, of necessity, delay it almost, well, at least 2 weeks to get it here to council. We have one report coming, this can come with it, and we'll have the whole thing as a package and then deal with it for a 4th time, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Did you want to jump in on that, Mr. Schobert?
Yes, in fact, I just wanted to actually reiterate the point that Alderman Lowe just made, Your Worship, that the report that we're bringing in January is coming directly to council.
Alderman Stevenson?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, I won't support this to go to committee because this is dealing with the right-of-way and the easement agreement, and there's nothing really for the public to debate on that. It's simply a report. So by leaving this no later than March to council, it can, in fact, if it's possible, be coordinated and brought with the report that's coming in council. So I urge you not to support the motion to go to committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. Alderman Marr?
Thank you. I support Alderman Chabot on this issue mostly because it's an issue of transparency. If we are going to engage our citizens as much as we can, giving them the opportunity to speak when we are talking about something so critical and so many of my colleagues campaigned on, I think that this is the right step. Our committee process is the normal path for these types of things to come through, and that's why I support it. Your Worship, I have one quick question for administration. Mr. Logan, if you'll permit me, Your Worship. The report could potentially come and be bundled in time with this other report in January. Is that not the case?
Mr. Logan?
Your Worship, the motion, the administration recommendation number 2 in this particular report deals specifically with the agreement. I do not expect that we would have an agreement ready for Council's approval in January. However, we would have the direction that that agreement would take, if you will.
So you'd have some preliminary ideas is what I'm taking
Yes.
from your answer.
Yes.
Okay. And that information would be included in this new report that we'll be receiving, will it not?
It would be, the direction would be included in the January report, the overall direction for the project.
Mhm.
And then subsequent to that, we would bring back the formal agreement for Council's approval.
And an easement is still a critical part of this process, is it not?
Absolutely.
And I think that, thank you, Mr. Logan. Your Worship, I stand by my rationale here. I do believe that the committee is the right process. I don't know that this will necessarily slow it down, but we certainly owe it to the public, Your Worship, to be able to engage them, hear what their thoughts are, especially on a report of this nature. One other quick question. The new council reporting that we have just asked for, these types of things, the airport, Toronto, major infrastructure projects are exactly why I asked for this information, alternatives and justifications for the recommendations. So thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. Madam Clerk? Oh, you second both of them. Alderman Collier-Cart, were you trying to second the amendment as well? Okay, so can we switch that to Alderman Collier-Cart? Sorry about that. Alderman Chabot. Oh, no, Alderman Chabot, you're just going to close. So Alderman Collier-Cart.
Alderman Marr covered the territory I wanted to cover. I think administration has told us that there won't be undue delay, and we need to break this practice of bypassing standing policy committees and coming directly to council. That's at the basis of this. It's not undue delay, and I think it's important that we start that process now. So I'll support the amendment. Alderman Chabot. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Collier-Cart. Alderman Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Mr. Logan, is there a reason that the public would need to speak to an easement?
Mr. Logan?
Your Worship, I think the easement agreement that we're talking about here would be fairly legal in nature, if you will. And I don't imagine it would be something that we would have a public debate on, typically.
So
and just, sorry, the timing is pretty critical. The airport is starting on April the 3rd. And the next council meeting after the LPT in March, we would have to blue sheet it through to the 21st of March.
So I agree with Alderman Stevenson. One, it's a legal issue. It's not a public issue, even though the public is going to be involved in it. But I feel that delaying this, it's been delayed already enough. We were told last July if we delayed any farther, we're not going to get it built. And by delaying it another 2 months, all you're doing is holding it up even further. So I would urge council not to vote for it, to come to LPT and get it to council in January as soon as possible.
Thanks, Alderman Jones. Anyone else on the amendment before I call on Alderman Chabot to close? Alderman Devon?
Just a quick clarification. Alderman Jones, you said coming to council in January. It is coming to council in March, correct?
Mr. Logan?
Your Worship, our main report on the overall project will be coming to council in January. This specific report is dealing with the easement agreement, which would be between the City of Calgary, the airport, Calgary Airport Authority, and the federal government. It would be if we are proceeding with the project, if that's council's decision in January, then we will need an access easement agreement with the owner of the land, which is Transport Canada, and the leaseor, which is the airport.
Thank you. Please see.
Ms. Chobert, did you just...
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind council that what we're talking about here is not the easement itself, it's the status report as to where we're at. And given that we're dealing with the airport and that we're dealing with the federal government, I dare say this report will not be in final form for at least a minimum of another year. So, I mean, we can bring a status report at any time, but it'll basically say in progress. I'm foreshadowing what the content of the report will be.
Thanks, Mr. Chobert. Alderman Chabot to close.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, some of the argument that members of council are making are actually helping to justify my original motion, Your Worship. But I'll give you a couple of points as to why I would think so. First of all, it is just a status report, as has been indicated. It is coming back to us in one form or another in March. Whether or not to presuppose whether or not the general public has the necessary skill sets to be able to provide additional direction on this, I think is, short-sighted from our perspective, and the need, I guess, to be more transparent. I guess, in my opinion, this is probably the best way to do it. If it is, if we're going to get an update in January, and the public won't have an opportunity to see what that update is all about, this would be probably their only opportunity to provide input to it, being as the other report's coming directly to council anyway. So that will be made public in January. The public will have an opportunity to see it, and if they feel the need to provide initial input, this would provide them with that opportunity. As was indicated, this could be blue sheeted to council without causing any delay, and if the public does contribute something to this report, great. If they don't, nothing lost. So hopefully council can support it.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. On the amendment only, on the amendment to change council to council through LPT, are we agreed? Any opposed? Call the roll, please.
Alderman Pincott.
No.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Alderman Stevenson.
No.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Alderman Chabot.
Yes.
Alderman Colley-Urquhart.
Yes.
Alderman Demong.
Yes.
Alderman Farrell.
No.
Alderman Hodges.
Yes.
Alderman Jones.
No.
Alderman Keating.
No.
Alderman Lowe.
No.
Alderman McLeod.
No.
Alderman Marr.
Yes.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
Lost.
Thank you. On the main motion then, any further discussion before I call on Alderman Stevenson to close? Alderman Stevenson? All right then, on the recommendations, are we agreed? Any opposed? Alderman Chabot is opposed. Oh, Alderman Lowe as well. All right then. That takes us to notices of motion. Notice of motion 2010-45, recycling next steps. Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. Well, I think the motion itself is quite self-explanatory. It's moving us forward, or at least asking what the next logical step would be for moving forward with our recycling program. Council has an established policy. It's a 80% diversion of our waste by 2020. That's an aggressive goal, and we need to have a series of steps in place that we can strive for in order to achieve that goal. It's not, over the weekend I was asked by a number of people, what is the next logical step? I don't have that answer. That's why I'm asking administration. I suspect it will be organics. It's certainly a largest part of our residential waste stream, but there are likely other things that we could be doing as well, certainly on the commercial construction and demolition waste stream. So this is asking for a report in February for the residential sector, and then a report again in May for the commercial and industrial sector. And so if there are any questions, I can certainly answer them in my close, and I'll sit down and respond in my closing. Thank you.
Thanks, and I've got Alderman Pincott seconding that. So on this one, Alderman Hodges.
Yeah, yes, Your Worship, I have an amendment, and I think it's a friendly amendment, and that is simply the report to include an estimate of both the operating and capital cost expenditures required to implement the potential new initiatives outlined above. And I have a bunch of copies of this, Your Worship, for the clerk and anyone else who wants them.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges and Alderman Marr, seconding that particular amendment. So the amendment is just basically saying the report has to include.
Indeed, yes, that's what I'd like to see.
Any discussion then on this amendment? Okay, on the amendment? I was just saying, any discussion on the amendment? Wave at me if you want to discuss this amendment. Alderman Lowe?
Yeah, just a question to Mr. Pritchard. Are you able to pull these numbers together with some reasonable firmness by these dates?
Thank you, Your Worship. I didn't catch the full details of what was said. If it's, as His Worship alluded to, a bunch of numbers, we have numbers.
I know we have numbers. I just,
It says, Mr. Pritchard, it says an
numbers.
estimate of both the operating and capital cost expenditures required to implement any potential new initiatives outlined above. So in other words, where it says opportunities to include organics, we're saying what would that cost?
Certainly, we will be bringing some idea of the sort of scale of the costs involved, particularly the capital costs involved. If we were to get into organics, I think that's of prime interest to Council. The challenge is with as we get into the multifamily recycling, I don't know that we really know some of those numbers yet. We'll certainly bring as many numbers as we can, and I think it'll be an interesting debate and discussion, and perhaps there'll be further instruction arising out of that. But I think we've got to start somewhere and bring something to Council anyway.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all, Mr. Pritchard. In fact, I'm highly supportive of it. And I guess looking at the third bullet, the opportunities for multi-residential recycling, I suppose, is it reasonable that we would have a discussion around other collection forms? And by that, I guess I'm using code language for the involvement of the private sector.
Absolutely, we will be looking at all those things. And as I read these words here now, I think the only difficulty we might have is getting into operating capital costs on the multifamily recycling piece, because we're so dependent at the moment on the private sector for that. We've got some numbers around the organics piece, and obviously if we come in May, there'll be some things that we'll be able to put on for the ICI and the C&D. So I think we'll have a range of numbers, but not necessarily anything that we'd want to build a budget on at this time.
Okay, but something, and it will also include that discussion around the multifamily. That's a huge issue, I know most certainly in Ward 2, is the variety of multifamilies that we have out there. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Anyone else on the amendment? On the amendment, Alderman Putmans, then Alderman Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering, I think this might be a friendly amendment, that I would like to actually look at the full business case analysis. In other words, what might the savings be to other departments if, for example, compost might be available to parks and savings in other areas. In other words, what's the revenue stream looking like potentially, as well as what the costs are? And I think we should have a fully balanced look at this, just not examine the costs. What are the implications throughout the organization and perhaps into the private side as well, with potential revenue generation, if indeed it exists?
So we could add 3 words after the word required, which are "and potential savings," if Alderman Hodges is agreeable. I can't remember who seconded that. Alderman Marr? It's okay? All right.
Okay.
Done. Thank you. Alderman Marr on the amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I want to thank Alderman Farrell for bringing this forward in the first place, because what it does is it's asking us to chart our path. Where are we heading with our recycling? We know that the Blue Cart program has been a runaway success, Your Worship. And if it stands to reason, we have a council policy, 80-20 in 2020. If we're going to get there, then absolutely we need to have that map. And this is asking for that map. I'll also are seconding this amendment, obviously, because it's good governance. With this policy and with the ideas of where we're going, we need to know how much it's going to cost, what the impact is going to be to our capital budget in terms of the City of Calgary, and how is it going to impact our taxpayers. This is a critical path, and I think that we are in the right direction, and I'm very, very pleased that we're asking these questions, and we're asking the administration to give us the information that we need in order to make these kinds of governance decisions. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. Oh, more on the amendment. Alderman Stevenson on the amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. As Council knows, it was decided to leave the multifamily for the private sector up until much later in this decade. But I will be speaking to that when we come to the main motion. My concern here, and I'd like to ask Mr. Pritchard, My concern is how in the world would you go about by February coming up with any kind of an estimate of the cost to collect recyclables from all of these apartments and so on? Is that something you possibly think you can come up with an estimate on that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Alderman Stevenson, you've confirmed what I think I was trying to say to in response to Alderman Lowe, is that piece of the equation would be very difficult for us to know. I'm more comfortable suggesting that we've got a bit of an idea on the organics piece in terms of certainly the capital costs of that. Still not, haven't really got firm numbers on the collection piece of organics, but absolutely the recycling of multifamily, that would be a very difficult thing for us to land on a number on.
Your Worship, I would like to make an amendment to exclude the multifamily from this amendment.
Very well. No, the mover's saying it's not contrary, so, but I'll have to take that as an amendment to the amendment. It's probably longer than 3 words. So do you have some language for me, Alderman Stevenson?
I think that we could do it by just saying the report to include both the operating and capital cost expenditures required with the exception, and potential savings with the exception to the multifamily recycling to implement the potential.
Okay, so to implement the potential new initiatives outlined above, comma, with the exception of multifamily recycling.
Okay, that'd be perfect.
So do you have a seconder for that amendment to the amendment? Thanks, Alderman Chabot. This is our first amendment to an amendment. Isn't this fun? So on the amendment to the amendment, which is to exclude the multifamily, any discussion on that? Just wave at me. Oh, Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. I think I know what Alderman Stevenson is trying to do, but I think we should be getting all the information possible. Part of the reason we decided to stay out, or the only reason I think we decided to stay out of the multifamily business, was to allow the private industry, private businesses who may have been put out of business by going full curbside, give them the opportunity to have some room to move into another type of business. And from what I understand, our processes have been difficult for them because they haven't been able to access the sorting facility. So that's something that I would like to see out of this report, is how do we allow access for these private businesses who are doing a service by collecting for multifamily? How do we give them access to our sorting facility? That would be part of this report. So to eliminate information out of this report, I think would be hampering us from doing our jobs. We're looking at triple bottom line. So of course there'll be a business case. There'll also be risk to the landfill. The long-term costs of not doing this. This should all be part of a complete discussion of the benefits and risks of our waste stream. So although I understand the intent of it, I think it may limit the possibility of opening up the business to the private industry by taking it out. So I won't be supporting that. Thank you.
Thanks. And just to be 100% clear, Alderman Stevenson's amendment to the amendment, I'm enjoying saying that, does not remove looking at opportunities for multifamily residential recycling from the main report, but it does remove the operating and capital expenditure numbers from the report. Mr. Pritchard?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to clarify a little bit on Alderman Farrell's line of thinking, we know relative to the multifamily, we know the processing at the end cost, the processing costs, and so there's some costs that we can address in terms of once they have access to the MRF, and we know those kinds of numbers. So it's the collection cost, and the bit that we would have difficulty there is it's maybe not even knowing the cost, it's the practicality of so many different types of multifamily. Each one's going to be different, and that's the beauty of the private sector being in that market, because they will determine the collection cost based on their costs, but then we would have to consider then the additional costs of processing and dealing with it once they collected it. So that's the sort of the difficulty that we have is it's not going to be necessarily a one-size-fits-all one number. And you can imagine that the multifamily collectors, the private collectors, will be charging different numbers for different situations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment? Alderman Lowe.
Well, Your Worship, and I'm going to, part of our discussion the other day at the procedural bylaw discussion was, in point of fact, you allowed an amendment to the amendment with an, in quotes, friendly amendment, which throws the way we do business off. And if you'd have looked down here, you'd have seen my light come on and me waving, saying, Your Worship, I want to talk about that too. So really, with all due respect, sir, any amendment to a motion is put as an amendment to the amendment, and it's got to be dealt with, because my issue is not so much with Alderman Stevenson's amendment to the amendment which you've accepted.
You're leaving us all in the dark.
I know I am. But the light will come on and it will shine upon us. The issue I have is that the 2 or 3 words you inserted before changed the whole tone of Alderman Farrell's motion. Alderman Farrell's motion, as I read it, was to get a broad report covering 4 bullets, which would then allow council, as a go-forward position, to move forward in a very specific way, if it chose. It also then, and I can see where Alderman Stevenson, I understand his concern. Out of that concern, we keep getting this report wider and wider and more prescriptive as we go, and I'll allow Alderman Farrell to correct me if I'm wrong on her close. What she was looking for was opportunities, infrastructure requirements, opportunities for multifamily, and some idea of milestones. That was it. Not finite dollar amounts or who does what. So I like the tone of the original motion as put, because I think it gave us set a path for us to something that I'm incidentally very anxious to get back to. Still, I've always described the most amazing day I had in council when I put the original recycling motion, which was a one-size-fits-all, $21 a door, you get it all, thought I had it, and lost it. Still can't believe that day, but nonetheless, so I'm not going to support the amendment as put. I will, with some regret, support the amended motion without Alderman Stevenson's amendment, because I think it also moves this report beyond what I think Alderman Farrell's intent was.
And Alderman Lowe, you are very, very welcome to vote against whatever you like, but I'm not using procedure to try and change what members of this council want to do. I didn't hear a point of order from Alderman Farrell suggesting that either of the amendments were contrary to her original motion, so I allowed them, and I will continue to do that. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment?
With respect.
On it already.
With respect.
Alderman Lowe, you've spoken it on already.
With respect, sir, we have a procedural bylaw and there's a reason for it.
Yes, and I'm following it to the letter, Alderman Lowe. If you'd like to challenge the chair, you're welcome to do so, but we don't really need the lectures on whether or not we're following it, unless you're going to challenge the chair. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment?
Can I bring us back?
Yes, Alderman Marr.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions of clarification, Your Worship, if I might. Number one, I don't think that the original motion nor the amendment seeks to in any way, they're playing musical chairs here, in any way seeks to preclude the private sector from doing the waste collection. I have a significant amount of multifamily in Ward 8. Many of them are in towers, and we heard from them during the election campaign. When is recycling going to come to us? So just a quick question, Mr. Pritchard, in this notice of motion where Alderman Farrell is asking for opportunities for multifamily recycling, does that necessarily preclude, in your view or your interpretation, the private sector in any way?
Absolutely not, Your Worship. Rather, I think it's what I read into that is it's going to try and find a way of answering the current problem that we have of accessibility to the MRF. That's the real challenge right now, and And we're working very hard with the private recyclers and the MRF owner as we speak to try and come up with solutions to make the MRF accessible to them. And it's not a question of capacity, and it's not a question that the MRF owner doesn't want the business. It's rather the operational constraints of the kinds of vehicles that are picking up and just access and handling, efficiently and effectively handling the waste stream as it comes to the MRF. And so I think the opportunity that we have is really rather to sort of facilitate the private recyclers' access to the MRF is how I would see one piece of the report that we'd like to comment on and talk about and get a bit of a discussion going.
Just very broadly, how do we solve some of these problems? We have hundreds of thousands of citizens right now that do not have access to recycling, and that's an issue, especially if we're going to try to achieve our lofty goal, Your Worship, of the 80-20. That's one of the reasons why I'm on my feet today. It's still good governance, regardless of whether we're talking about multifamily, whether we're talking about organics, whether we're talking about any time that the city is involved in a major project such as this. One other quick question, Mr. Pritchard. We're already collecting for rubbish for multifamily, are we not? We're not doing private. We're not doing any of it?
We have some through the commercial collection piece, yeah. And actually that's an issue that we have to deal with as well, because there's an inequity there that exists right now in terms of payment of the disposal fee. So there's a much broader issue that we have to bring to council, a discussion on the whole collection and recycling of multifamilies. And we got into some multifamily collection, garbage collection as an option many years ago at the direction of council. And it's still something that's sort of lingering there as a sort of legacy practice that we need to tidy up.
And this is something that we could report on as well as part of this. Is that not the case?
We do plan on reporting on that, whether it'll be part of this report, because this is really talking about 80-20 and how we get to 80-20. I think the whole issue of commercial collections, and it's connected, but whether we'll be ready to address it, I'm not sure, but I can tell you that it will be a report that will be coming to council sometime next year.
Have you done some work on that already?
Yeah, we've done a little bit. We've sort of done some analysis and looked at where it's happening and where there are sort of inequities in practice, if you like, and we've got some numbers, but we haven't got the final. I don't really want to come to council until we've got a solution.
And so there's nothing that you could use to extrapolate what that would take to do the multifamily then for recycling.
Well, to extrapolate in terms of whether
potential
the private
costs.
sector's doing it, I'm not
sure. What the amendment is asking for to an estimate of operating and capital costs for the multifamily, you couldn't extrapolate and come up with some numbers. Because I'm trying to decide as to whether or not I'm going to vote in support of Alderman Stevenson's amendment, which is
I don't think we could sensibly do that. We do know that we know what some of the private recyclers are charging at the moment to collect recyclables. But as long as it's in the domain of the private sector, then it will cost whatever they deem they need to cover their costs and make their profit. And so, because there are so many different types of multifamily, and some of them don't lend themselves well or easily to collection, and that will partly depend on the desire or the willingness of the particular multifamily unit to avail itself of the service. And there are a number of different solutions that could be proposed, but I think we're probably getting ahead of ourselves. That's the kind of thing that we'd like to bring forward in the report rather than write the report.
And I appreciate that, and thank you for that. Well, Your Worship, what I'm hearing from administration is that the discussion on multifamily does not preclude private collection in any way, and perhaps could help to facilitate it. Asking for numbers, asking for our operating and our capital requirements is just good governance. So I won't be supporting the amendment to the amendment, although I understand very clearly what Alderman Stevenson is trying to do, and to make sure that we're not putting people out of work and we're not trying to exclude them from having an opportunity to enter into this. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. On the amendment to the amendment, Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I seconded it because I believe that Alderman Stevenson's intent is to try and provide or increase the opportunity for the private sector to be able to participate in this program, and they haven't really been given all the tools to be able to effectively provide the service. And as has been indicated, there's a multitude of different multifamily housing complexes, even within a given area. To expect administration to come back with a report and being able to provide a detailed and accurate analysis on the cost implications of providing the service, I think might be a little too challenging based on the timeline that's being provided here. So I will support this amendment, and hope that Alderman Stevenson is considering bringing forward an alternate notice of motion in the future to help to facilitate providing this service to the multifamily housing, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment? Alderman Hodges?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Just briefly, I recall the recycling debates several years ago, and some years ago, and the idea was that the city would go into the recycling, current recycling blue bin business, as it's called, without impinging any more than needed to be done or would end up being done with the private companies involved in their own recycling ventures. Now, I never thought it would be that simple. It isn't. But I'm going to support the motion because short of there being a dialogue with the small companies in the multifamily recycling business, I think it will simply be looked at as an effort by the city to put them out of business, and I don't wish to see that situation happen. So, again, I will be supporting the motion.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment? All right. Alderman Stevenson, would you like to close on that?
Yes, I would, Your Worship. I think the conversation has gone way off track here because I'm totally in support of the notice of motion, and I'm also in support of getting the cost estimates back. But all the amendment to the amendment is saying is that in order for us to even come close to getting a report back in February, we've got to take the multifamily costing out of there, because the job to actually come up with any kind of an estimate on that is much more than what can be done in a couple of months. So I would like to see, it's nothing to do with whether the private or public or anything. It's just a matter of making sure we can get this report back with the kind of information that Alderman Farrell is wanting, and also what Alderman Hodges is proposing here, and get it back at that time. It's going to take some time for us to come up with a plan of how multifamily can be done, and of course at that point I'll be arguing in favor of the private sector, and I will, when we get to the actual motion, speak more about that and the problems that the private sector, the blockades that they've got right now. So I urge you to support this amendment to the amendment so that we can get back to the main motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. On the amendment to the amendment, again, this is simply to exempt multifamily recycling from the operating and capital cost estimates. We can call the roll.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yes.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Alderman Chabot.
Yes.
Alderman Collier-Urquhart.
No.
Alderman Demong.
Yes.
Alderman Farrell.
Yes.
Alderman Hodges.
Yes.
Alderman Jones.
Yes.
Alderman Keating.
Yes.
Alderman Lowe.
No.
Alderman McLeod.
No.
Alderman Marr.
No.
Alderman Pincott.
No.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
Lost.
All right, that takes us then to the amendment. The amendment to include an estimate of both the operating and capital cost expenditures and so on. Any further discussion on the amendment? Alderman Stevenson.
Bishop, we obviously have to change the date on this now, So tell me, Mr. Pritchard, when you could actually come up with what's being requested here of the amendment. Can you give me I'll make the amendment on the date, but what do you need in time to do that?
Well, Your Worship, I'm not sure if we had an indefinite amount of time whether we would be able to answer it, quite honestly, because we can't get inside the business case and practices of the private recyclers. I mean, we can come in February with our best guess or estimate. We can speak to which numbers we're confident in and which numbers we're not confident in and which numbers we haven't got a clue, quite frankly, and just to sort of move the thing forward. But I just don't want to leave council any illusions that we can meaningfully know what the private sector can would need to make this all work for them. We can speak to our end, but which is the processing end and some of the stuff that we need to do to enable them to basically collect and deliver somewhere that it can be handled, and we know that that's going to add to their costs. But other than that, it would be very difficult for me to know. And I think, quite frankly, I think that my best advice to council would be to actually proceed with the report and see what we can bring, and we'll make the best effort to bring, as somebody said earlier, as much as possible or as whatever we can. And what we can't, we'll be clear on, and we'll take council direction from there if you need us to go down another road.
No, that's fine. Then because what's going to happen is you're going to bring everything we asked for, but the costing on the multifamily is going to be a blank, basically. Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. Any further discussion on the amendment before I call on Alderman Hodges to close? Alderman Hodges?
It's closed, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. On the amendment to add the language you see on the screen to the original motion, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Any opposed? Alderman Colley-Urquhart, Alderman Chabot. No, call the roll, please.
Alderman Pootmans.
Agreed. Yes.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yes.
Alderman Carra.
Yes.
Alderman Chabot.
No.
Alderman Colley-Urquhart.
No.
Alderman Demong.
Yes.
Alderman Farrell.
Yes.
Alderman Hodges.
Yes.
Alderman Jones.
Yes.
Alderman Keating.
Yes.
Alderman Lowe.
No.
Alderman McLeod.
Yes.
Alderman Marr.
Yes.
Alderman Pincott.
Yes.
Mayor Nenshi.
Yes.
Carried.
Very well, then. Now we're back to discussion on the main motion, and I've got some lights. So we'll do Alderman Jones, Chabot, Marr, Stevenson. So Alderman Jones.
Mr. Pritchard, a couple of years ago, Alderman Stevenson, myself, and Alderman Pincott, and then Alderman Connolly had a meeting at FCM where the company that came forward, and I guess there's 3 companies that do this, where they take waste and convert it to energy. And I think we had the discussion not long after we came back from FCM. Has anything been done with that? And I mean, this may be outside of this notice of motion. It may require another notice of motion to have a look at it. Has anything been done or looked at in regards to converting waste to energy?
Yes, lots. We've met with a number of these people. There are more than 3. We've taken a look at a number of the plants and opportunities. It was a notice of motion of Alderman Hawkworth's that was to look at organics processing, waste to energy, and the different options for organics. So we did a very comprehensive consultant's report on that, and I think we will, just hearing the conversation, I think we will bring that, the findings of that to committee, and possibly bring our consultant as well to speak to that, because where we're seeing waste to energy, that it's not something that you get into too soon, that you do the simpler stuff first, which is the composting, the windrow composting, closed vessel composting, and then to get yourself almost to zero waste beyond 80/20 is when you really start looking at the waste to energy piece. It's incredibly expensive. A lot of it is leading edge technology, which we would be reluctant to recommend to council that you get into, unless there's a proponent would step forward and basically take all the risk. We've had some discussions with some of them. It's a continually evolving technology, and the opportunities are continually evolving. But really in Europe, where most of this is happening, they do deal with their organics, the simpler diversion of organics first, and they deal with the composting piece first. And part of the problem is that the organics are the moisture content in the organics, and some of these processes are quite finicky, and they require just a steady waste stream of feedstock of constant sort of moisture content. And once you get organics bouncing around with the moisture content, they tend not to be as reliable. So it's a very, very complex subject. It would be a very big step for council to take to jump into that first, just because of the cost involved. And it would inevitably, put up, somebody has to pay the capital costs, I guess, and the operating costs. And so it's not the panacea, I think, that it's necessarily made out to be. And our advice to council would be to proceed cautiously on that. But I'd be quite happy to sort of include in this report a bit of a fuller discussion on that, so that committee can ask those questions and sort of see where we might want to be going. That's the whole point, is how do we get to 80/20?
Well, I guess not to make your report any more expensive, is there a possibility, I understand from what I heard 2 years ago, and I don't know if anything has changed, that there was two kind of guinea pig operations that were being done, one in Ottawa and one in Red Deer, I believe it was.
And that's the same technology. The Ottawa Red Deer one is the same technology. It's the same company. There are others as well, and as I say, we've been actually looking at best practices in Europe and what they do there, proceeding straight to waste to energy is it's quite frankly not our recommendation at this point in time.
Okay. So when this report comes back or comes forward, do you want me to make a motion or amendment to add that piece, or will you just do it?
We don't need that, Your Worship, because I'm taking it that the direction is that it talks about opportunities to increase organics diversion and infrastructure requirements, and under those two bullets, we've got lots of material and lots of content, that council could really get their teeth into.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Jones. Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Your Worship. So Mr. Pritchard, then that, through the chair, that would include companies such as Compo Gas and those kind of things that would look at converting from an anaerobic to an aerobic environment.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. Part of the technology review that we did look at all these proprietary systems and analyze them and look at the cost benefit and so on. So that's in that report. Yeah.
Okay. Through the chair, Mr. Pritchard, is part of our 80/20 by 2020 strategy also related to diverting some of our waste into other municipalities? And I'm asking that question, but I think Alderman Stevenson can elaborate further on that, because I've been led to believe that we've lost a significant amount of revenue by not providing opportunities for people to make use of our landfill sites, and thereby collecting tipping fees that are going outside of our municipality. That is definitely affecting our revenue stream.
Well, I mean, we don't have a strategy to deliberately divert waste in that sense, but I mean, we charge the tipping fees that we do in order to run the landfill and to help us get to 80/20 by 2020. I think there's we've certainly had discussions with some of the larger waste management companies who suggest that they should get a bulk discount, but that seems to me contrary to the notion of wanting to reduce the amount of waste in your landfill.
So there has been some discussion about bulk rates.
Every year.
And council hasn't provided that direction?
Nope.
At this point?
That would be, in our view, quite contrary to the goals and objectives of 80/20 by 2020, and I would really, caution council to think very carefully about that notion. It's something conservation. It's the same as in water conservation. You don't encourage people to use more water by charging them less. And similarly with waste diversion, you don't offer bulk discount the more people bring. I mean, that's just that's not good conservation sense.
Yes, but if this, the waste stream is there, regardless of where it ends up, in which landfill it ends up, the waste is still being created, whether we're the ones who dispose of it or disposed of elsewhere.
I'm not convinced that it is going elsewhere, Your Worship.
I'm loving this discussion, folks, because I think it's a really important one, but I would remind you that it's not that relevant to the motion on the floor at the moment.
Well, this notice of motion does talk about achieving 80-20 by 2020, and which is why I kind of asked the question, Your Worship. 80-20 by 2020, I think refers more specifically to our own landfill sites. And if we're diverting waste to other municipalities, I think it's somewhat ambiguous of a diversion, Your Worship.
I understand what you're saying, Alderman Chabot. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. No further questions.
Alderman Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a good notice of motion. It's wayfinding for us. It asks administration to give us some more direction as to where we can head in order to achieve our objectives. It was made better by Alderman Hodges asking for better governance, to throw some numbers into the mix. I think that's also good. We know that landfill costs us money. We know that this is the right thing to do from an environmental support position, and I urge you to support it. It is very well done, Alderman Farrell.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, it's been mentioned here about the cost of waste to energy and the high cost that would be for the City of Calgary, but we have to consider the high cost of our landfill sites and also the potential liability of those landfill sites. We also have to look at what the cost is going to be for us to collect these organics. And I know that I've heard already from many constituents who say they're not ready for another bin to do this, and they are happy with the 2 bins that we have now, but I think it's going to be a difficult thing for us to push forward with another bin. So I think the cost of collecting, all of these costs have got to be brought into consideration, and Alderman Jones brought up the waste energy through the plasma systems. And I think that we have to look very closely at that, because I think that's the way that we're going to be going in the future. And Mr. Pritchard, you're right. There's some technology breakthroughs that are changing day by day in this area. So I think that we have to make sure we're getting the details. Now, whether or not you're going to be able to have the details in this report in February for that even, I'm not sure, because there's so much new there. I would just like to speak briefly about the multifamily. I've been very frustrated, and as have the private contractors been very frustrated, because even though we passed this a couple of years ago to let the private sector get involved, absolutely nothing can be done because there's no access for these people to go to the MRF, to the facility. And so I think that we, as a city, have to take a leading role in getting that MRF opened up. I realize it's a private contractor, but somehow we have to have that set up, or help them to set it up, so that different size trucks can go in there and dump. And Mr. Pritchard and I have had a number of conversations, Your Worship, about this, and we're apparently looking at setting up transfer stations where these contractors or private companies can actually set up contracts with apartment buildings, with office buildings, with condo complexes, different size trucks, bring them to a transfer site, and then we as a city take the recycling from there to the MRF. And I'm not convinced that's the best way to go. I think if we're going to spend any money, if we have to help this private contractor that has the facility, help them get set up to handle these small contractors with different size trucks to handle different size complexes, I think we got to move that way, because I'm hearing from apartment buildings, from condo complexes, they want to get into recycling, but there's no contractor able to give it to them because there's no way of getting rid of that recycling material to the single stream system at the facility. So I hope that this report that is coming forward is going to give us some kind of direction of where we're going on that, because it's frustrating. It's not moving fast enough. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. You know, there are those of us that wish that we had added the word sustainable in front of the material recycling facility, because then it would have been a funner thing. No, if sustainable, then it would have been a much more fun acronym. I'll let you think about that one. Anyone else before I call Alderman Farrell to close? Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. Well, bringing this motion forward, I knew that it would get into some interesting debate, and Calgarians love to talk about garbage. Council likes to talk about garbage. The danger, of course, of bringing it forward was knowing that we would want to get into the details of what we were expecting from our administration in this report, and that's the reason for the report. I don't profess to know the answers to it. I suspect that I would know the next logical step, but that's why we need this information. Talking about multifamily, yes, I think we can make some very easy changes in order to enable that those companies to move forward and provide services to Calgarians. We're trying to encourage people to move into multifamily, and yet they're not treated in an equitable way, both with their garbage collection and their recycling. So if we want to see multifamily be the choice for Calgarians, then we need to make a number of improvements in a number of different directions. The organics, of course, we know about the liability with it and a liability with our landfill, and so we need to look at how to move forward on that one. I don't know about organics, and some cities use digesters, some go waste to energy, some do composting. Let's figure out what the best way for Calgarians is. One of the benefits of being the lagger, one of the last cities in Canada move in this direction, is we can learn from other cities and learn from their mistakes and do the best thing for Calgary. The land use bylaw, we've got a land use bylaw that doesn't outline the type of facilities we need to provide in multifamily. We say it needs to provide some sort of recycling facilities in multifamily, but what should that look like in the future as we go into TOD and corridor studies and densification with Planet? So those are all questions that need answers. We won't get them all in this report in February and in May, but at least we'll get the work started and start making some decisions that I think Calgarians want. I certainly heard during this election that Calgarians are eager to see the next steps. The citizen satisfaction survey showed that Calgarians were thrilled with the service. We still have some who aren't, but I would say they're in the minority, a very small minority. So let's move forward, Council. I'm looking forward to the report in February. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alderman Farrell. So on notice of motion 2010-45 as amended, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. That then takes us to notice of motion 2010-46. Councillor is title for Calgary's elected officials. Do I have someone moving this motion? Alderman Hodges?
Yes.
Do I have a seconder? Alderman Keating. Thank you. Alderman Hodges.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, just to briefly introduce it, as a number of members know, this was a motion that was before us 3 years ago. I've placed it once again. It was an issue to some degree during the recent municipal election, and I said at that time that I didn't have a problem in bringing it forward again, and that's what I've done. And I appreciate Alderman Keating saying that he would like to be on the notice of motion and to support it as well. So the preamble, I'm not going to read, Your Worship. It's before all of us, and it's easily understood. It's the standard boilerplate preamble that we generally use with references to the Municipal Government Act and to the current bylaw 29M95, which, if this passes, would need to be amended. Speaking of that, the Law Department, Mr. Tully just pointed out to me this morning that in the last and further be it resolved, that bylaw 29M95 and all other city bylaws, policies, and official documents be amended as appropriate. Now, that doesn't give specific direction to the Law Department to bring forward a specific amended bylaw in the fullness of time, but that was the intent of the and further be it resolved. So there may need to be an amendment that the Law Department prepare and amending bylaw as soon as possible. Well, an amending bylaw when we've dealt with the issue, obviously. Alderman Keating may have an amendment to this implementation date. Your Worship, I picked March 31st out of the air to give time for some transition, but if the amendment says October of 2013, at the time of the next municipal election, that I don't see as a big problem. It sets a date, a specific time for the new title to be, the new terminology to be used, and everyone can plan accordingly in terms of any business cards. I know Alderman Jones is concerned about election signage and all those sorts of things that are not a part of the bylaw, because election signage is paid for out of our privately raised campaign funds, but it's nevertheless a practical issue and an actual issue that we should think about. So with that brief introduction, Your Worship, I'll leave it at that.
Alderman Hodges, am I to understand that when you put it, you change the "and further be it resolved" phrase a little bit?
Yes.
So can I read it back?
Yes.
And further be it resolved that the Law Department prepare an amending bylaw as soon as possible to bylaw number 29M95 and all other city bylaws, policies, and official documents as appropriate, and then the rest of it's the same.
Thank you. Your Worship, I forgot to add, and I didn't intend to not include the cost estimate that I obtained from the clerk's office. I had asked when I gave them the notice of motion what their estimate would be of the cost, and they estimate between $25,000 and $50,000. But I'm hoping that with a long time for the transition, that those costs can be kept to a minimum. As we know, the letterhead these days is produced out of our computers and printers. Business cards may be an issue for some. They can be costly. They needn't be, but they can be, as you pointed out in your comments just after the late October, just after the election. Mr. Tobert and I used the same type of card, the white background, black print, and red. Those are the least expensive type of business cards to obtain. The ones with the gold lettering are the more expensive ones. So I only have that estimate. I don't have any other cost estimates, Your Worship. I'll leave it at that. I see a number of lights on.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Alderman Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. In 2007, I supported this, and I was interested to learn during that debate in 2007 that then Alderman Fox Melway, Alderman Collier, and Alderman Farrell were the ones opposed to the name change, because they did not feel that this was sexist or exclusive language at all. I do have a couple of quick questions, and if Alderman Hodges has moved it differently, could we see it on the screen by any chance?
Just the last sentence.
Well, the last sentence is quite critical, though, isn't it? My understanding is that it would be councillor or alternative city councillor to take effect, but what was the operative date?
Alderman Hodges didn't change the operative date. I suspect we may hear an amendment on that.
Well, you may. I was just going to, okay, so there it is. It's glasses time, unfortunately.
The change was just a very technical one around the Law Department.
Well, I'm going to make a technical change, if I might. Two of them, actually. Number one, now therefore be resolved that the city, sorry, this is in the first paragraph, shall henceforth use the title councillor or city councillor. I'm wondering, Your Worship, if there's an opportunity for a compromise, which I so enjoy, to be able to allow the members of council to style themselves, if you will, in the manner if they're choosing either councillor or to retain the more traditional term of alderman. So I would like to include that somewhere, but I'm looking for some guidance as to whether or not that is contrary.
So you're suggesting that I'll have to remember what to call each person while sitting in council?
Well, I'm certain
I've got a tiny little pea brain as it is, Alderman Marr. I don't know if I could fill it with any more of that. That said,
your brain is quite cavernous, Your Worship.
That said, gee, I don't know. Mr. Tully, what do you think of that, MGA-wise?
You're in trouble when you're asking lawyers something.
And we'll let the clerk think about how those minutes get written later, but Mr. Tully?
Well, Your Worship, I think you have to make a designation as to whether it's an alderman or whether it's a municipal councillor. I don't know as it would allow you to call both. So my view, without having checked the Act extensively, Your Worship, I think you need to make a decision one or the other.
And I think that legal advice is the legal advice on which we will have to rely, Alderman Marr.
Oh, and I appreciate that. Looking for guidance as always, Your Worship. Now, if I could change that then, if we were going to do this henceforth, that means effective if this passes today, in effect. Is that not the case? That word henceforth in the first...
In the now therefore it be resolved, it says the City of Calgary shall henceforth, one of my favorite words.
It's a classic.
You would need to give that instruction today, Your Worship, as to whether you wanted to change all of your bylaws and policies to reflect the term councillor or not.
Well, it sounds like, and
yeah,
just the way I'm reading it,
the second phrase reads March 31, 2011. That's actually a fair point. That the two do seem to be a bit at odds with each other.
It's totally
I bet that the mover and the seconder wouldn't mind if you just removed henceforth from the first one and making that effective date and the second one the effective date for the whole thing.
Agreed.
Mr. Keating, Alderman Keating? Okay, so that should be fine. Just an editorial change for clarification. Thanks, Alderman Marr.
Thank you. I just would like that to be crystal clear. Now, if I could make an amendment then for this to take effect, effective the next election period, which would be October 2013.
Madam Clerk, do you have an exact date for the day after the next election? Or the swearing-in day, I suppose? Okay.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, Madam Clerk, I mean, I would be very, very appreciative. I think that this gives us some opportunity to have the city change all of its documents, all of the cards that we're using, and I have about $15,000 or $18,000 worth of signs that say Alderman on it right now. I think that what we would like to do is have an opportunity for us to transition into it, and the election cycle is the right time to do that, because most of us, with the exception of yourself, obviously, campaigned as aldermen, and that's my amendment. Thank you.
Alderman Stevenson has seconded that amendment. On the amendment, then, I've got lots and lots of lights on, so we'll go back to the waving. On the amendment, Alderman MacLeod, then Alderman Lowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not support the amendment. I think that this will make it an election issue, and I don't think that's a good idea on many fronts. I also believe that now is the time to do this. I think that we've talked about this long enough, and deferring it is just going to continue it on forever. I also think that if raising money to replace election signs, assuming that election signs can't be amended in such a way, there's a couple of options to that. One is, I think most people in this city would understand that there has been a change and you could continue to use the aldermanic signs. But I also am concerned that election signs would be a reason for not doing the right thing. This is a change on a matter of principle. And I think we need to argue the principle and not personal campaign donations. I also think that if you want to turn this around positively, even though women still make 60 cents on the dollar for men, I did manage to raise enough money in my campaign to pay for the election signs over a relatively short period of time. I think 3 years is plenty. And signs can be recycled effectively.
Oh no, now you started it. That was the last notice of motion, folks. Thanks, Alderman MacLeod.
What the community associations took my signs and they made tent cards out of them and reused them for a variety of different things, so they've continued to be used.
Mine went to a preschool for art projects.
Yes, yes. Because I can't change my signs to read re-elect either.
Alderman Lowe.
I think mine went to a grade 6 thing that does spatial things and architecture. So a couple of questions, Your Worship. I agree with moving the date to the next election day, but I'm thinking back to the language around the change of boundaries, which, if I recall correctly, were effective election day, Madam Clerk. So would that not be more appropriate?
Madam Clerk.
Your Worship, Alderman Lowe is correct, and we would have to bring a bylaw back to say what the effective date of the change would be. So that would happen at the same.
So it would be that's the nice clean cut on it. My second question is to Mr. Tully, and it strikes me, Mr. Tully, the way, rather than bringing a myriad of bylaws in here, changing words, that virtually every act we have in government now has a preamble that says, regardless of his or her, the term is gender neutral. So it'd be a similar one bylaw that says wherever the term alderman is used, the word councillor would be applicable. Would that be the approach you'd take to it?
Ms. Shelley?
Yes, Your Worship, that would be the approach. We would bring an omnibus bylaw, as we call it, with a notwithstanding provision to say notwithstanding any other bylaw or council policy, the term alderman is henceforth changed to councillor.
Yeah.
And then we would simply leave it to the clerk's office to make the changes as the bylaw come up for revision periodically.
Yeah, okay. So that covers off the two issues then. We have the date when it really is clean, which is on election day, and fits all the rules around that. You know, signs and that sort of thing, I don't know why that's entering this debate, Your Worship. That's another world altogether and should not be related to what we're doing
Nothing
here.
to do with the business in this chamber, that is correct.
Precisely. So I will support the effective date being election day 2014. Thank you. And
13, The MGA has not yet been amended for four-year terms.
Okay,
so.
whatever the date is. But, you know, that I think makes it very clear. And I'm not sure if in doing so we need to change the language to take effect. Where's Alderman? Well, if October 21st, 2013 is in effect election day, then that meets that requirement. It's a nice clean changeover. That also, Alderman Hodges, saves you $50,000 over the year. It also gives all of our city folks time to change all the stuff that they have to do over the period of a year without undue encumbrance. So I think the date is sound, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. And just to confirm, Madam Clerk, that date that you've got there is election day or swearing-in day? It's election day?
It would have to be on election day for the ballots and everything.
One would imagine.
And there may be a slight amendment to that because of the printing of the ballots ahead of time. When you file your nomination papers, we may have to have the new title on that. So we'll just have to
bring
verify
forth that amendment if we need
Yeah.
to. I would imagine that given our experience with the boundary changes, it should be okay, but if we need to change it, we'll change it. That'll just be administrative. Thanks. On the amendment, I have Alderman Putmans and Alderman Keating. Alderman Putmans?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'm wondering if Alderman Marr and Alderman Stevenson would, how to put it, if the concern is cost, would it be acceptable to write into a motion words to the effect that the cost would be incurred only on an as-needed basis for stationery or signs or things like that, local in-house signs, not election signs, arose? So in other words, addressing the cost issue, I think would be advantageous, in my opinion, to move forward with the title councillor and make the investments in the name change on an as-needed basis. So going forward into the next election, the public is fully familiar with the term and we're ready to go.
So, Alderman Putmans, I think that if this particular amendment fails, if it passes, then your point is moot. If this particular amendment fails, I don't think we need any particular language around that. I think Alderman Hodges made it clear in his opening that that would be his intent, and certainly my my advice to members of council would be use up all the business cards and stationery that you've got and just reorder as needed. but I don't think we need that written into the motion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Alderman Keating on the amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this debate is kind of summing up what the debate has been over the number of years, is rather than let's talk about the issue, let's talk about all the things that either will delay it or will somehow sidestep the issue. The issue is it is time to do it. The date is immaterial in many cases. The cost is certainly there. We have to look at the fact of making sure that we go forward from this date forward and not go out and change everything so it costs us an awful lot of money to do it, rather than just worrying about the fact that it is time to change from alderman to councillor. Either way, I'm happy with either date as long as we go forward with that spirit that it is time to change it and we don't need to do it all tomorrow.
Thanks, Alderman Keating. Anyone else on the amendment? Just wave at me if you're on the amendment. Alderman Marr to close.
Well, Your Worship, this has been a very interesting discussion, certainly. We are looking to make a change, to bring ourselves into the 21st century, and I think that that's something that that I'm hearing from the voices around the table that they want to do. As being a bit of a traditionalist, I would have liked to have had a compromise where we would allow different members of council to style themselves either in the traditional way or in the more modern way. I think that the right time to do this is during the transition of an election period. I certainly campaigned, as I did in 2007, for the office of alderman, not for councillor. That said, I'm prepared to campaign in 2013 as councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Marr. On the amendment to change the effective date from March 31st, 2011 to October 21st, 2013, on the amendment only, are we agreed? Any opposed? Call the roll, please.
Alderman Collier-Cart.
Yes.
Alderman Devon.
Yes.
Alderman Farrell.
Yes.
Alderman Hodges.
Yes.
Alderman Jones. Alderman Keating.
Yes.
Alderman Lowe.
Yes.
Alderman McLeod.
No.
Alderman Marr.
Yes.
Alderman Pincott.
No.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yes.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Alderman Chabot.
Yes.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
It's carried.
Very well. That then takes us back to the main motion, and I've got a number of lights, so we'll start with Alderman Chabot.
Your Worship, it might be in the best interest to go to other members of council because I'd like to make a referral motion, but
Can we finish the discussion first?
I'd rather you bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. I think I've debated this motion several times, and I suspect it's going to pass today. And I'm fine with that, but I'm not going to support it. And I'll explain why. There's several reasons why I have not in the past supported the name change. I'll focus on three of them. I come from a family of very strong women. They would like to think of themselves as feminists. My mother was the first woman that I knew who didn't change her name when she got married. And I think she even had to have permission from her husband to do so. I have an aunt who worked at Getty Oil Company who crashed the lunchroom at the Petroleum Club when only women who worked in the oil industry, or only men who worked in the oil industry, were able to dine at lunchtime. And we used to have lots of fun discussing it over the dinner table. We also used to have a lot of interesting discussion around the nature of feminism and the nature of gender-neutral language and whether or not it had an impact. And our discussion often ended up with the same conclusion, that although it made us feel good that we would take gender out of language, and it had very little impact. In fact, in a lot of societies or in a lot of organizations, people just stopped there. And so the question was whether changing language changes behavior or whether changing behavior changes the use of our language. And I'm fully in the latter camp. I think we need to change our behavior, and then our use of the language and our understanding of language will change as a society. A lot of people ask me whether working at City Hall, it's a moot point that we're beyond feminism here, that women are treated equally. Not even close. I had a member of council in the last term who refused to call me anything but darling. Darling, and I'd say, you know, I'm somebody's darling, but I'm not your darling, and please don't call me darling. But that continued in City Hall, and I think there's a lot of evidence of that. If the movers want to make fundamental change, and the members of the audience want to make fundamental change, let's make sure that our committees, our most powerful committees, have at least one woman on them. Usually I'm the only woman in the room, but during our organizational day, I'm the only one who brings it up. It doesn't seem to matter. So I think this can be a bit of it's kind of window dressing to me. So I can't support it. Social engineering of the English language over the last few decades, as I said, seems like window dressing to me and doesn't address the fundamentals of sexist attitudes. The arguments that since society has a bias against women and our language has gender, therefore the latter caused the former. And I know countries with romantic languages are experiencing the same debate, and they're struggling with this issue, and since gender is part of their whole grammatical structure, they're adding feminine job titles rather than eliminating masculine ones. So rather than change the word itself, we need to focus on changing the meaning behind the word. The third reason for me not agreeing to this is I just prefer the word. I think it has color and it has history. And Alderman Annie Gale was the first woman in the Commonwealth, if not the world, to be elected to government. And I hold her up as a mentor. Alderman Annie Gale. There's another alderman, Alder Broad, the fabulous Sue Higgins, who would never, ever have agreed to this motion today. And she's someone else I hold up as being a leader for women in Calgary. So I do believe that one thing is certain, that English language, the constant is change. And English is a remarkably spontaneous and variable thing that will adapt and transform itself to changes in our history. So, Council, I won't be supporting this. I feel quite certain that from probably today forward I'll be referred to as councillor. I can live with that, but please don't stop there, ladies in the audience. Please don't stop there.
Having known many of the women in the audience, I know that there is absolutely no risk that they will stop there. Alderman Keating.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to go on and continue from what I said before, that the vast majority of any feedback I received never talked about the issue. And the issue is equity, but it's equity for all. It's not equity for men, it's not equity for women, it's just equity across the board. And it is simply time we just change the name. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Keating. Alderman Putmans.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's another perspective to this debate which I want to just touch on a little bit and briefly as possible. Calgary is known as a city of opportunity. Opportunity is an inherently inclusive term, and I think labeling ourselves with a more inclusive name as elected officials representing the city of Calgary carries a certain amount of symbolic importance. There's another element as well, wearing perhaps an economic development perspective, but an important perspective for the city. We must be seen as a city that is forward-looking. The business investment we seek in this city, the workforce talent that we seek internationally that we compete for, looks to cities that have a forward-looking perspective. This name today, which is looking promising, this name change, is part of that forward-looking perspective, and I would encourage councillors, aldermen, to vote in favor of such a name change. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Putmans. Anyone else before I call on Alderman Chabot for his motion? Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, other than the motion, I also would like to have an opportunity to have at least a little bit of debate. Although Alderman Farrell is a very, very tough act to follow. She has made this argument in the past, and I applaud her submission today and her leadership to the city. I think we had more leaders like Alderman Farrell at the table, we would be a better council. Not specific in regards to her gender, just her as a person. And I have 4 wonderful daughters, and I've taught them all that they can be whatever they want to be. So I certainly am not biased in any way on the basis of gender. So having said that, I'd just like to say briefly, before I make a referral motion, that I'm not supportive of changing the name, because regardless of what title individuals are given, there will always be individuals that will seek to gendercize it. If we change to councillor, there will still people that will want to call us councilman or councilwoman or councilperson, just as they try and gendercize alderman, as has been suggested. So I think changing the name isn't really the right approach. Changing the perception and promotion of women in different fields, I think, is the better approach to be taking. And although some members of council may be privy to the actual costs associated with the changeover, I'm not privy to those costs, nor am I privy to the resource allocations that will be required from law and the costs associated thereof, as well as other people in administration, as well as how many documents will actually have to be changed. And are the costs that have been referred to primarily costs associated with the changes that we will have to incur, or is it the corporation as a whole? So I'd like to make a referral motion to at least better understand what the cost implications are, because typically when we make a motion that has costs associated with it, we have to identify the source of funds and be able to allocate a specific number to the budget. So I would like to make a referral motion. Madam Clerk has it. What I haven't included in my referral, which I've subsequently added to my own yellow copy, is the addition of and report to council through Community Protective Services no later than February 9th, 2011, because I haven't identified the specific reference as to where it should go and when it should come back. So I think we should at least have a good understanding, if we're going to make this change, on what the cost implications are and what the resource requirements are going to be able to affect this change. So if I can find a seconder for this referral, I will sit down and listen to further debate.
Community and Protective Services, Alderman Marr? Yes. Really? Or Alderman Chabot, rather? Sorry, I was looking at Alderman Marr when I said that.
Well, I was looking to send it to a standing policy committee. I can't think of a better committee for it to be referred to, but of course I stand to be corrected by Madam Clerk as to the appropriate standing policy committee that it should be referred to.
Services, wouldn't it be? Madam Clerk is suggesting PAC, which probably makes sense. Is that all right with you?
Sure. Thanks. Except, Your Worship, that the public doesn't have an opportunity to speak at PAC.
True. Up to you, Alderman Chabot.
I think Community Protective Services is probably the best place to refer to, Your Worship. Thank you.
All right, do I have a seconder for that? Alderman Marr? Thank you. On the referral motion, then, any discussion? Just wave at me. Alderman McLeod, then Alderman Lowe.
I'm not even sure where to start on this. I think we've heard Alderman Hodges indicate that what the maximum costs could be. I think we've heard that the transition is going to happen over time. I think we've heard that the bylaws and procedure bylaws and all of that will happen as a blanket statement and will be changed as the documents are changed over time. I think The costs that seem to be really important here are personal costs related to the campaign. I don't think they have any place in referring to a policy committee.
Thanks, Alderman McLeod. On the referral motion, Alderman Lowe.
Well, Your Worship, Alderman McLeod covered much of it off. We heard from Mr. Tully. Bylaw changes is an omnibus. And then the documents are changed as and if and when they come in front of us. And that's a normal procedure. By changing the date to Election Day 2013, absolutely clean lines for administration to work against. Very little, if any, cost involved in that. I was not going to stand to speak to the motion, but I will applaud Alderman Farrell's comments because much of what she said, I would have said. And whether it labels me as a cranky old man, the engineering of the English language for this sole purpose, I find distressing. It achieves really nothing in the long run. But having said that, that, I guess, is my principal objective, to neutralize the English language to just some bland palate when it is really such a wonderful language. I also was curious when I was thinking about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Tully, if you can, but the code, which relies entirely on language, until they recently started trying to change the Romantic languages, the code didn't recognize between men and women and this sort of thing. And that's a bit I picked up through my life dealing with lawyers who could practice on both sides. Just an interesting comment. So while I applaud Alderman Farrell, I'm going to take much the route that Alderman Farrell says, and I won't vote for the motion as amended.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. On the referral motion, Alderman Keating.
Thank you, Your Worship. When I go back to, and if I went to the archives, I'm sure I could dig up some information from 1884 when the councillors of Calgary were called councillors. I don't believe those were changed just because they changed the name to aldermen at some point in time from then till now. I also wonder, when we stand up here and we talk about our daughters and why we don't call them sons, but if we had daughters and sons, we would then call them children, which is equitable to the individual speaking of. So once again, coming back to costs, I think we've covered that. The costs will be over and as required the next 3 years. Next election, we tend to go through vast changes in all of our signage, whether we call ourselves aldermen or councillors, and that's when the costs would be incurred as a regular ongoing case of business. I think we still come back to the idea of issue. The issue is it's time to change. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Keating. Alderman Marr, was it on the motion to refer? Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I support the referral for two reasons. Number one, it directs it to a standing policy committee. And I happen to chair it. You're right. But that's a totally separate issue, mate. I support it because this will give us an opportunity to hear directly from the public who are sitting in the gallery but have not had an opportunity to speak on the issue. Number one. Number two is it does give us an opportunity to allow clerks to give us specific information as to how this would transition, how we would make sure that the bylaw happened, and the direct costs, which I think is important. But I'm on my feet because I've had a couple of titles in my life. Father's the one I'm terribly proud of. Fiance, husband, and constable even. Today, as alderman, Your Worship, I'm standing to speak to this issue because it is important. And we have heard Alderman Farrell speaking terribly eloquently about how we need to change society, not our titles. This is something that's very true. If you look around the table, Your Worship, we have 3 women among 15 members of council. We have 2 visible minorities. This is something that would not have been possible in 1884, and that's when they changed from going from councillor to a ward-based system, and aldermen are always attributed to a ward-based system, like in the city of Chicago and many others in the United States and in Canada. Obviously, it's an original English term, which I'm also quite fond of. But I support the referral motion because it does give us an opportunity to have this discussion with the citizens who have elected us. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. Alderman Hodges on the referral motion?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Just briefly, I don't support the referral motion, as indeed there's been lots of discussion about this in the last 3 years. Emails have come in over the last several weeks, and there's been other times of public debate. A referral doesn't do anything to get this business moving forward. I did appreciate some of the comments that Alderman Farrell made, notwithstanding the fact that she doesn't support the idea of changing. I can understand that too. Neither did I in 2003, but times move on. The public view changes, and that's why I think it's time to vote for a change. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Alderman MacLeod, was it on the referral? Okay. Anyone else on the referral before I go to Alderman Chabot to close? Alderman Chabot?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say, although I'm making this referral motion, I'm making this referral motion so that everyone is clear about what the cost implications are going to be, what documents are going to need to be changed, what resource allocations we're going to need to apply to this specific thing, because you're going to make a change and you're going to have it effective regardless of when the effect date comes into place. There's a number of documents that make reference specifically to the title that we've currently been given us that will need to be changed. And in these times when we're looking at budgetary cuts and making do with fewer staff to do more, to task them with some additional work without identifying specifically what the resource requirements are going to be, as well as the cost implications of it, I think is not being physically prudent as a council. So that's why I'm asking to have it referred to a specific committee. Having said that, at the end of the day, I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to support it because I don't think that a title makes a person better or worse one way or another. And Alderman Farrell probably made the best argument anybody could make to not vote for it. And she did make one point specifically in regards to different countries with different languages. One that I'm familiar with specifically is French. Everything has a specific gender, whether it be a table, a chair, a pencil, or a pen. As Alderman Farrell indicated, they're looking at those languages to actually increase the number of gender-specific references that haven't been identified clearly one way or another. So I don't think this is the right direction to go by changing the name. And so hopefully council will support this referral so we can better understand what the full implications are of this change and vote accordingly. Closed, Your Worship.
So this is on the motion to refer. So an affirmative vote here is to refer. All right. So on the motion to refer, are we agreed? Any opposed? Call the roll, please.
Alderman Demong.
No.
Alderman Farrell.
No.
Alderman Hodges. No. Alderman Jones.
No.
Alderman Keating.
No.
Alderman Lowe. Alderman MacLeod.
No.
Alderman Marr. No. Alderman Pincott.
No.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Alderman Stevenson.
No.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Alderman Chabot.
Yes.
Alderman Collyer-Cart.
Yes.
Mayor Nenshi.
No.
Lost.
Thank you. We're back to debate on the main motion. Alderman MacLeod.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a couple of comments on the main motion. I think that this is actually a concrete step, a small step, and perhaps I can't remember the word right now, but when people see themselves represented, it is something concrete, and it does encourage them to participate. And I'd like to think that this name change will make some changes in how people see themselves, how women see themselves represented in council. The empowerment of women. That's right, Richard. Thank you. So I do think it's an empowering term. It has actually been effective with police officers and others in terms of the representation of women in those areas. I also find it's awkward in terms of the mail that I have received from, and particularly email, from a number of constituents. It's often addressed alderwoman, alderperson, alder whatever. And I think the term councillor just puts people out of their awkwardness on that. I also found the same problem when I was campaigning. Lots of times when I said I was running for alderman, people who are not from Calgary, where this is their first election, were unclear that that was what it actually was until you said it was city council. And I think that is an indication of it's time to get in line with other municipalities and move forward. I would encourage council members to support this.
Thanks, Alderman MacLeod. Anyone else before I call on Alderman Hodges to close? Alderman Hodges, may I have your permission to say a few words before you close? Thank you. I think that this is a particularly important move for council to make, regardless of what we've heard otherwise. You know, I had the opportunity to look at the marvelous display that's right behind me on the history of Calgary elections. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to look at it. It's very interesting. And it was particularly interesting for me to note, as has been noted in this debate, that our city councillors used to be called councillors. When the city first started, we were called councillors. It's a good old word.
On a point of order, on a point of order, respectfully, I have no issue with you debating from the chair on an occasional basis, but if you're going to continue to pursue this what appears to be a sense of entitlement to debate from the chair, Your Worship, I would ask you to please follow the procedural bylaw and debate from outside of your chair, and ask the deputy mayor to take your chair, Your Worship.
Happy to do it, Alderman Chabot.
Thank you.
So on this point then, it is, I think, now I get more time because I get to stand here. It is, I think, a particularly important move to make. Because while many say that it is not important, that it's irrelevant, the point is that it is important and relevant to some members of our population. If someone said to me it's not important for you to light the menorah in City Hall's atrium because it's only relevant to a small percentage of our population, or it's not important for you to preside over Eid at City Hall because it's only relevant to a small portion of our population, I think that we would rightly say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Because symbols do matter. And they may not matter to everyone, but they matter to some people. And if we can make a difference at almost no cost to something that no one is really defending, the word alderman, and it will make a difference to some members of our community, I can't imagine why we wouldn't do that. As I mentioned, the word councillor was the word that was used in the past when the city was first founded. It's a good old word. There's nothing politically correct or modern or innovative about it. It dates from the 1300s. And sometimes I criticize this council and the city administration for not being innovative enough. But surely 800 years is enough time for us to understand that a word works okay. So I strongly, strongly support this, and I really strongly urge council to do the same. Thank you.
There's another light on Alderman Hodges to close.
There we go. Good. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And this has been a very good discussion, a very good debate. I think we've aired out just about every aspect of the issue there is. And I was going to mention the change that to reflect this, a number of people in society who prefer inclusive terms. This is a much more inclusive term than the previous designation of alderman. It took me a few years, I will admit, to get my head organized around this change, but that's happened, and if I can change my views about a title, I'm sure everyone in council can do that, and I would urge members to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a request for a recorded vote.
On the recorded vote, Mayor Nenshi for, Alderman Hodges for, Alderman Farrell against, Alderman Carraw for, Alderman Colley Urquhart against, Alderman Chabot against, Alder Demong for, Alderman MacLeod for, Alderman Lowe against, Alderman Pootmans for, Alderman Keating for, Alderman Stevenson for, Alderman Jones against, Alderman Pincott for, Alderman Marr against. It's carried, Your Worship.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, no outbursts.
I'll get him.
Recess the meeting. Recess.
I just had to move for a reconsideration based entirely upon the music. I'm going to rule that one out of order, Alderman Jones, if that's okay. We normally don't allow for exhibitions in City Council, but I nonetheless thank you for the musical interlude. That takes us then to Bylaw 60M 2010, Bylaw tabulation, starting with 60M 2010.
Now
Yes.
move the recommendations, Your Worship.
Your Worship.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, yes?
We first deal with the proposed disposition of closed roads, which is LAS 2010-81.
Because it's related to this one?
It has to be adopted prior to the bylaw getting the reading.
So is council agreed then to deal with that item first? Are we agreed? Any opposed? All right, we have unanimous consent, so we can go ahead and do that. So this is then,
Your Worship, could I have a motion?
you want a proper motion?
I know I'm being really quick.
No, it's the right thing to do. Alderman Lowe, will you move that?
So moved, Your Worship.
Thanks, and I hear a seconder, Alderman Chabot. So on the motion to change the agenda to deal with, I'm sorry, which item is it?
It's LAS 2010-81, Your Worship.
2010-81 right now. Are we agreed?
And I'll move the recommendations.
Any opposed?
I'll move the recommendations of LAS.
And you're moving the
2010-81.
recommendation. Do I have a seconder on the recommendation then? Alderman Keating, thank you. So Alderman Lowe, did you want to say anything about it? Alderman Farrell, CMLC stuff? All right. So this is a pretty straightforward motion that just has to do with changing some road allocations based on the plans for the East Village. So on this motion then, LAS 2010-81, are we agreed? Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Chabot. I didn't see your light on. I apologize, Alderman Chabot.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. I need to understand something here. We're talking about buying land from Municipal Land Corporation to the tune of 1.423393 million?
Your Worship, there's two parts to this report. One is the setting out the funding principles for the transfer of land between City of Calgary and CMLC at a rate, and also buying land which is required back to the City of Calgary, which is part of the square that will be used there for park. That was bought by CMLC, which the City of Calgary needs to buy back.
Okay. So my question then, if I may, Your Worship, is when the City of Calgary originally transferred the lands to CMLC, did the CMLC pay the city for those lands, or was it?
Mr. Stevens?
When you say the land, yes, lands were transferred originally to CMLC at the book value for the establishment. CMLC has subsequently gone out and bought private third-party land, which is required for the square. That is land that the City of Calgary is going to maintain, so it should be in our ownership, and we're paying for it.
So CMLC has paid for it through a borrowing bylaw that they got from the city specifically for that purpose?
I'm not sure if they used money from the borrowing bylaw, but for funds that were accessed by CMLC, they acquired the property, and we're now acquiring it from them.
So these lands that we're talking about here specifically were privately held lands that CMLC had to purchase. No part of these lands were originally public lands, City of Calgary lands?
The lands that are referred to there as being acquired, yes, were third-party lands. There's other lands here about closed road. The first part of the report, the second part of the report, the land that the city is acquiring, yes, was third-party owned land.
Okay, and so now the borrowing bylaw, if I may, Your Worship, probably also through yourself to Mr. Stevens, is going to be repaid through the disposition of those lands?
It gets paid when the lands either get sold or no later than December 31st, 2019.
10 years, more or less. Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thanks for that clarification.
Oh, and thanks, Alderman Chabot. Sorry, I missed you the first time.
In light of those comments by Mr. Stevens, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. And just for further clarification, my understanding from the CMLC is that this is largely because of the way the land for the development, the first acquisition, the development that's being done there, the way that is subdivided, it actually means there needs to be a small change to how the whole thing looks, which requires some land to be transferred back and forth. Alderman Hodges?
Yes, just briefly, Your Worship, through the chair to Mr. Stevens. Mr. Stevens, Council approved a sale in July. The problem with when we always look at CMLC, it comes in sections, it comes in pieces, without much background, unless you remember, of course, what that history is. Has anything transpired on the resolution of Council on the sale from last July?
Ms. Stevens?
I don't have any specific knowledge of that. That's being done through CMLC. I think things have transpired. I don't believe it's closed because this is a precondition of close so that we can actually get the land to CMLC, and that needs to be done by the end of the year.
Yeah, that is my understanding as well. I believe, Alderman Farrell can correct me, but I believe the date to close is later this week or next week, isn't it, Alderman Farrell?
I'm asking about the July resolution of Council. Yes.
I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. I believe it's closed.
My understanding was it needs this motion to do the final dots, I's and T's. Thank you. Any further comment on this one? All right, then, on the recommendations in LAS 2010-81, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. That then takes us to the associated bylaw. Bylaw, yeah, in just a few moments, folks. Bylaws, you can go out and sing with them. Bylaw 60M 2010. Mr. Tully, I understand we're only asking for first reading on this bylaw today. So do I have a mover for that?
Move first reading of the bylaw, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Marr, thank you. So on first reading of this bylaw, any discussion? Are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well, carried. Now, we have a couple of minutes before the break, so I wonder if we should look at number 8.2, bylaw regarding the Calgary Police Commission. Do I have someone to move this one?
Your Worship, I'll move this item and 3 readings of the bylaw.
Thanks, Alderman Collier-Card. Alderman Marr is seconding. This is the bylaw required to implement the change that we talked about in our last meeting. Alderman Lowe?
Your Worship, I have the same question I had last time. Do we have a letter from the chair of the commission requesting this?
It was handed out,
We
yes.
do.
We do.
He handed one us. Oh, one was handed out from him last week.
I have it here. If you would like it, I'll have it sent over to Alderman Lowe.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Any further discussion on this one?
Just briefly.
All right, then, on the recommendations, I guess there's not recommendations. On first reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any? On second reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Authorization for third reading of the bylaw? Oh, opposed? Thank you, Alderman Hodges. Authorization for third reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? And third reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? Alderman Hodges. All right, thank you very much. We are recessed. We'll be back at 1:15. All right, folks, we are back. Alderman Hodges.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to introduce a class that's visiting Municipal Building City Hall today. It's a grade 6 class, 42 students from Our Lady of the Assumption School. The teachers accompanying the class are Natalie Ferris and Jennifer Tranter, and they're studying local government, and I'd like everyone to welcome them to City Hall. Thank you. And if we could ask you to stand, please. Thank you.
There you are. And as we always say, now you're on TV. So welcome all of you for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day here at City Hall. All right, we're now moving to our various matters of urgent business. The first one, 9.1, Alderman Pincott.
Thank you. It's I emailed this earlier to clerks, and I don't know if they have it to be able to put this motion up on the screen. Okay. The motion that I have is for the appointment of a new city auditor. And the resolution, and I'll read it out, is 1, the council appoint Todd Horbashenko as the city auditor commencing February 1st, 2011, pursuant to the terms and conditions of Bylaw 30M 2004, which is our city auditor bylaw, and to the terms and conditions of an employment agreement satisfactory to the city solicitor, the director of human resources, and the chair of the audit committee. And 2, that the chair of audit committee and city clerk be authorized to execute the employment agreement on behalf of the city of Calgary. And so that is my motion.
Thank you, Alderman Pincott. I think we're just waiting for it to be up on the screen. I saw Alderman Lowe seconding that motion as well. And breathless anticipation, folks. Any discussion on this item before I call on Alderman Pincott to close, now that it's up? Let's give council members a moment to read it. Alderman Pincott. All right, then. Any discussion on this item? Alderman Pincott?
I just, I would like at this point to thank the members of the personnel subcommittee who worked on getting us to this point. That would be Alderman Lowe, as well as Greg Draper and John Carpenter, who reviewed all of the candidates and interviewed the candidates, and we are very, very confident and comfortable with Mr. Horbashenko, and are very much looking forward to him coming here. This is an appointment that has been coming for a while, and I think that we are going to be in very good hands with the new city auditor, and I look forward to his leadership in getting our audit office very much in the direction that I know we all want to go in. So thank you very much for this, and I look forward to your support on this.
Thanks, Alderman Pincott. So on the motion on the screen, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. And thank you, and I'll echo your thanks, Alderman Pincott, to the members of that selection committee. I know they did a ton of hard work, so we can now move on together. All right, next then we have C-2010-75, further reductions to the 2011 operating budget, which you should have all received on your blue sheet on Friday. There we are. So I will accept a motion to move these recommendations. Thanks, Alderman Demong, seconded Alderman Chabot. Alderman Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. While I appreciate the idea and concept of reducing further $8 million into our operating budget, almost a full percent I have some concerns about the nature and how we're going to get there, which is basically a cross-the-board shotgun scatter approach rather than to something more strategic, more surgical. And I'm just wondering if the city manager could speak to it and give us a little bit more information. And specifically, how many jobs are going to be lost at?
Mr. Gilbert?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Chair, Alderman Marr, Council had attempted to create a lower tax rate by reviewing first the submissions that we prepared for 6-7, and then the second package, roughly $35 million of additional suggested cuts. And at the time that that motion was placed during the budget debate, it was indicated that Council didn't want us to come back with anything from that same list. And then it was subsequently modified to be efficiency improvements as well. The amount of work required to find another $8 million in about the 5 to 6 weeks that would be available to us to do that kind of work was insufficient to do a good job. So rather than fail at the instructions from Council, I prepared a report which said, look, twofold. First, if you still require a cut, the most expedient way of doing that, and it is expedient, is just to create an algorithm and apply it across all of our large budgets. The instructions I was going to provide to staff was that in making these across-the-board cuts, I was going to ask managers across the corporation to simply reduce their expenditures a little bit across the board and hopefully keep the same level of service without any layoffs. So if layoffs were required, that would be the subject of a report that would come back to Council at the same time as the EIR, or it would be part of the EIR that would say we're either not able to make our guidelines because of our insufficient resources, or we would change our service levels in order to make sure that we could continue to provide services at a slightly reduced level. But this is less than 0.5% being applied across the board, the whole corporation at the same time.
Mm-hmm. But we've also done similar prior to this meeting. We went and had a across-the-board cut to most departments. Did we not?
I would argue, Your Worship, not. Council did a lot of debate during the week, and I think was perhaps way more selective in what they chose to take or not take.
Sorry, the original administration recommendations that we first looked at were about $35 million of across the board. Anyway, that's not important. I wanted to know specifically if there was going to be jobs at risk or being lost, because $8 million is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 80 FTEs, but I'm hearing that you don't fear that's going to be likely?
It's hard to say. I mean, that would be an outside maximum number of reduced staff levelings. I mean, it's really up to Council to decide what your tax rate is, and then we will provide services that are equivalent to that resource level. This isn't about reducing FTEs. This is about setting a tax rate, Your Worship.
No, and I appreciate that. Your Worship, in light of the City Manager's comments, I'd like to call certain items separately, if I may. Sure. If that's appropriate. If you could call 421 separately. If you could call animal bylaw services and fire and public safety communications separately. If you could also call roads separately. And it's this one here.
I got it. I'll read it when he's done.
Sorry, and if you could also call, those are mine. Thank you.
All right, so Alderman Marr is requesting that we call 421 Community and Neighborhood Services, 004 Animal and Bylaw Services, 001 Fire, 002 Public Safety Communications, and 132 Roads. A little surprised you didn't put 110 on there, Alderman Marr, separately. Yeah, I think we can do that. Madam Clerk, you're okay with that? We'll call the rest of them as a bundle.
So, Your Worship, on a point of procedure, it seems like we've been given two options, either to go with the list that's before us or have administration go away and do across the board. That's what I sensed from your email last night.
So what we've got here, Alderman Collier-Cart, this is administration's stab at it, which is just an across-the-board mathematical allotment. to every department. And my understanding from Mr. Tobert is this is their only stab at it. So if we were to reject this motion today, then no further efficiencies for the 2011 operating budget would be coming forward.
Right, and then just to clarify procedurally again, there were 5 groups of cuts brought forward before, and it was council's direction that you could not go to any of those 5 groups
Any
again.
of the ones we rejected. Yes, that's correct. So, Mr. Sobert?
In my debate at the time of budget, I indicated that we might be bringing some of those back, Your Worship.
That's what I would hope for, but that wasn't clear to me, that we could bring forward some of those that were in those 5 groups.
Right, but that isn't how we ended up at the end of the day. We
I know.
ended up with a direction to say, go find efficiency reductions. And so it's a very challenging thing to do that amount of seeking in a short period of time and have less than a calendar year within which to implement it. It seemed like a very big challenge, and the part I didn't debate on, if I might, Your Worship, was to say, we actually have a lot of other things on the go at the moment. We're trying to get 12 to 14 going. And rather than try to look retrospectively over our shoulder at 11, we wanted to concentrate our resources on 12 to 14 to make sure we did a much better job on that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So essentially,
thanks for allowing me to clarify.
Oh, no problem. And it's important that we have this clear. So essentially, recommendation number 1 is the only option council will have to talk about further efficiencies outside of the Calgary Police Service, because we asked them for another $2 million separately. But it's the only option that council will have to talk about further administrative efficiencies in 2011. Recommendation number 2 is for administration to incorporate the efficiencies work into the strategic planning work for 2012 to 14. Thank you. Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, there was a number of recommendations that administration had brought forward initially to get us down to 6.7%, and council chose not to support some of those recommendations. And so subsequently, as a result of Mayor Nenshie's motion, they brought a plethora of other recommendations on cuts, again, in order of priority to minimize the impact on the corporation. I think this direction that administration has brought forward and looking at implementing something sooner rather than later provides them with enough flexibility to be able to incorporate some of these changes with minimal impact to the corporation. But the sooner we approve it, I think the better. The longer we delay it, the more difficult it'll be to implement some of these changes without having direct impact on the corporation. So in my opinion, I don't think we should be Dutch auctioning this thing. Either we approve the cuts or we don't approve the cuts. To try and go through this and itemize areas of priority individually and not allow administration the flexibility to find efficiencies is maybe not doing the most prudent thing. We're trying to keep our budget down to a minimum, looking for improved efficiencies. I think this is a good first step to achieving that, especially in light of the fact that we're going to be moving towards another 3-year budget. It does set a direction and does send a message. I think that we are very keen on finding improved efficiencies, and I would suggest that if you're not supportive of this direction, then vote against the entire thing rather than Dutch auctioning it at this point. So I'm going to support the recommendations. I won't be supporting the removal of certain entities within.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Alderman Lowe.
Well, Your Worship, my initial response to this was much, I believe, is your suggestion number 2, is that to do this effectively, we have to have a thoughtful consideration of it as we move forward into the 12-14 budget cycle. Pick up on something Alderman Marr said, and that's that, up to this point, every action council's taken has been carefully considered and strategic in nature. And this is anything but that. What it is a across-the-board reduction on an assumption that frontline services will not be impacted. My previous life tells me, because I've been through 2 or 3 of these exercises, that while in perhaps 12 there may be and I'm using vague language here, there may be minimum impact in services. Where it'll show up is in 13 or 14 or 15, because what you're doing is you're taking it out of the base without considering the impact as you go down the road. And you take it out of the base in tiny little ways that affect your ability to provide frontline services effectively, either in 2012 or further down the road. In my previous life, when we went through an exercise like this, we tended to do things like defer essential but recurrent training that was essential, or to do things that ultimately caught up to me in the form of an audit, or in the ability to provide a level of service or do something. I would far rather, Council, that if we're going to do this, that we do exactly what was discussed last Thursday at the budget meeting, which is we start looking, we mine all of the information we have out there about the services we provide and how we provide them. We analyze that information and we take it forward, and if necessary, we bring in our business process people to streamline it. But what we do in a considered and strategic way. This is not that. This is anything but that. My view of this list is that, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this list, is that if we're to do this, for council to do its job effectively, we can't do it with one vote for a long list. What we in fact have to do is do exactly what Alderman Marr is suggesting, is go through it item by item by item, so that we have some degree of understanding from our administration on what the impact of each item is. And as His Worship has pointed out, and as Mr. Tobert has pointed out, there simply isn't time between then and now to do that kind of analysis, to bring it forward so that council can consider this carefully and in a very strategic and very thoughtful manner. If we're going to call it separately, Your Worship, 110 must be pulled. No. Because 1,492,000, Mr. Logan, is about how many hours of transit?
Mr. Logan?
Your Worship,
math in your head real quick.
I was trying
effectively, if I get back to our conversation at budget time, I had related 1.2 million was about one bus route for a year.
Yeah, one bus route for a year, 20-minute service, 24/7.
It's taking it back out.
Yeah, it's taking it out.
Not 24/7, Alderman Lowe. We don't have any of those.
But that's
18/7.
That's the equation that Mr. Logan gave me. That's just to give some example of the order of magnitude. And I'm not prepared, Council, to even by default reduce transit. And my concern is that we could end up by default, through adopting this, affect transit to that effect. And that's but one example. So, Your Worship, if we're going to go further, and I go back again, I reflect on what Alderman Marr says, is that when the additional cuts were brought in, the $35 million, Council went through that carefully in a very considered manner, selected some and rejected others. And in doing so, they got the proposed tax increase for 2012 down to 5.0% or 4.99 or whatever the box score was up there. So, Your Worship, in my mind, there's two choices. We either sit down and we go through this with administration, line object or line by line, with so we can have a very clear understanding of the impact, not only in 12, but also looking ahead to 13 to 15, or 13 to 14, 13 to 15, so that we understand strategically what we're setting ourselves up for. The difficulty I have with that approach right now is that given the process we've set ourselves on for the next 3-year budget cycle that we discussed last Thursday and we'll discuss next Wednesday, and every member of council is welcome to attend those sessions, we're doing it in the blind. This is not considered. This is not strategic. This is not thoughtful. This is a blind rush to the bottom. So please, Council, I don't know, Your Worship, how you're going to put it. I really don't know how you're going to phrase the question to Council, given Alderman Marr's request. But in my mind, we either do it one way or the other. I really do, Your Worship, endorse your suggestion number 2 from last evening.
Thank you, Alderman Lowe. Alderman Farrell?
Thank you. Well, I'm in danger of repeating my colleagues, but I think I need to. I feel like we kind of wasted our time when we discussed our budget in detail a couple of weeks ago. And we're back to where we started. So we added some things and felt good about them. I did anyway when it came to transit. And now we're taking it away again. So I can't support this approach. If you look at some of these areas, community and neighborhood services, for example, they're trying to catch up from years and years of neglect. Our parks, we've got significant growth in a number of these departments that are trying to cope with this growth. And so I don't think we have any knowledge of what the impacts will be of this decision. So in a way, it's kind of lazy, Council. It's our job to determine what we want to see our city look like. And it's a bit flat-footed to just have across-the-board cut. I would love to look at strategic decisions in order to do things differently. We keep on talking about innovation. I'm welcoming that discussion. I think asking administration to, while we load on the work, remove some of their budgets and ask them to innovate, we're asking something that's pretty much impossible. So let's first understand, how does a corporation encourage innovation? It's a change of culture, and I don't think this kind of approach will help us get there. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Farrell. Alderman Stevenson?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, out of the 8 million, what's been requested to pull out so far, what Alderman Marr requested to pull out is 2 million out of the 8, and then another 1.5 million that Alderman Lowe was talking about. I really have a difficult time with this picking and choosing, as we're going to be pitting one department against another. Can I ask Alderman, or the city manager, Your Worship, are these figures all decided on a percentage of their overall budget? Is that how we come up with these?
Ms. Chilbert?
Yes, indeed. In fact, the percentage, I think, is 0.45 of their gross budget.
Okay, so if I was to make a motion, instead of it being 8 million, make it 4 million, then all these numbers would be cut in half, is that right?
Yes, we could do that.
I would sooner see us do that, Your Worship, than to start picking and choosing. I would like to see if council has the will to do that. I'll make a motion that we make it 4 million and go right across the board, and if someone will support that. Thank you, Your Worship.
We have an amendment on the floor to change the number 8 million in recommendation number 1 to 4 million. Do we have a seconder for that? Thanks, Alderman Chabot. All right, then, on the amendment to, yes? Oh, Alderman Chabot, you seconded the main. Do I have another seconder for this one? Alderman Jones, thank you. Thanks, Madam Clerk. On the amendment, then, give me a wave. Alderman Demong. It's up to you, Alderman Demong. You're the one who moved the main one. I would say it isn't, because it's still a reduction. We're just a change as to the amount.
My question would be, what is to cut? What is to stop anybody from moving? We call them individually at 4 million as opposed to 8 million.
Absolutely nothing. If the amendment passes and people would want to do that, we could do that too.
I would be very tempted to call it contrary simply because the whole idea is that we're looking to find cuts in the way that we operate the city. We're talking, as the city manager has said, less than a half of 1%. That's a half a penny per dollar. Throughout departments, not picking and choosing as who's favorites and who is not, I would encourage my aldermen, councillors, to stick with the original $8 million.
Thanks, Alderman Vong. I'm going to allow the amendment, but I hear your argument. It's a bit confusing because we have both of these things on the floor at the same time. But let's start with whether 8 million or 4 million is correct, and I certainly do hear your argument. On the amendment, Alderman Keating.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll say what I was going to say about the main amendment now, and then I'll remove myself from that speakers list. Some time ago, we had talked about who was on what team and all of that, and at that time, I said, I'm not concerned with that as long as we all have the same playbook. And I think to this point, we had the same playbook, is we were moving forward with some reductions, and I think we have to remain at the 8 million because that was the intent. I think then we have to land it in the hands of our administration and trust them that they will do the best they can with the less impact and allow them to go across the board and not pick and choose. Go for the 8 million because that's what we said, and they have the understanding, they have the same mindset that we will go forward with a reduction that does not impact frontline services as little as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Keating. Anyone else on the amendment? Alderman Marr on the amendment.
Well, I'm going to speak to this because we came up with the number rather arbitrarily, $8 million. And Mr. Tobert, if I might, how much would $8 million or 0.8% save the average Calgarian on their tax bill?
Your Worship, I haven't done the math for that. But if
I have great faith.
It's less than $1.
It's less than $1. So for less than $1, we're talking about taking another $830,000 from the fire department. We're talking about taking another $250,000 from community neighborhood services, and we're talking about cutting the 911 call center? Does that make any sense to anybody around this table?
Yep.
Well, you would be perhaps in the minority.
I would guess to a number of people around the table, which is why it's on the floor.
Well, I understand that the direction from administration that we gave them, find $8 million, the fastest and most expedient way to do it has been brought to us. Now, it's time for us to do our jobs, which is to go line by line, if need be, and discuss the merits of these particular cuts. Because I will not support a cut to the 911 center. That's madness in my view. I won't support another cut to the fire department. These are emergency lifeline services. And to reduce them now, just to save a potential $1, is, in my view, completely insane. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Marr. On the amendment, Alderman MacLeod, then Alderman Lowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the point was made is the number is being relatively arbitrary. 4 million is only half as bad as 8 million. I still have an issue with the fact that we really don't know what the implications of the cuts are. And so I have concerns with it all the way around.
Thanks, Alderman MacLeod. Alderman Lowe on the amendment.
Well, Alderman MacLeod just made my point. It also puts us in a rather unique position in that those of us who don't want the 8 should support the 4, then just vote against the 4. That's sort of the way it works around here. But also, if we end up calling things, one of the other ones I'd like called individually, Your Worship, is 840, capital financing costs, because I suspect in doing that will be some interesting impact as we go forward on some of our capital projects, Your Worship. And it's I think, again, to hearken to what Alderman Farrell said, is I think we need to know that before we go ahead on it. So if I stick my hand up supporting 4 million, equally, Your Worship, if somebody wants to make it 2 million on this Dutch auction, I will stick my hand up for that. But I will continue to vote against, and I would urge my colleagues to vote against this at all, and in fact, go for the thoughtful, strategic, ordered approach to this in the next 3-year cycle. And we have an opportunity, we have a way of going forward on it, and I think we should allow that to bear fruit, Your Worship.
Mr. Sawyer, would you care to respond to Alderman Lowe's question re Program 840 on capital financing costs? Just maybe you can let the newer members of council know precisely what that is.
Thank you, Your Worship. The capital financing costs would include, for example, interest on our debt, tax supported, things like that. As Mr. Tobert said, what we've done is taken our gross expenditures, so there's a total of 2.7 billion. Some are excluded, like the police, and just mathematically divvied up the 8 million. So there's no per se plan right now how that would happen. Changes in interest rates might help to offset it, things like that. Otherwise, it'd be something that would have to be managed.
I was wondering if it meant we were off renegotiating our lines of credit and so on, but so this is one you just have to manage through, really. It's a number that's there, but you'd have to find other places to manage it. Okay. On the amendment then, the 8 million to 4 million, Alderman Hodges, then Alderman Chabot.
I haven't heard anyone make this comment yet, Your Worship, and I think it's time it was made. This, folks, is a reduction in growth. Nothing's getting cut other than growth. If you let this go and the 8 million flows into the base, you've got a bigger problem going into 2012 to 2014. So let's not forget, this is one continuous caper. It doesn't end here, and it doesn't start again all of a sudden because some Alderman Lowe puts a switch on in January. It's one continuous operation. And I might add, the municipality, the city, only controls half the mill rate. An equal amount to whatever, or more, to whatever the city decides, the council decides, is going to be the tax rate increase for next year will be matched almost exactly by the province. So we're only dealing with 50% of what the increase could be. So that's the larger picture, it seems to me, we should keep in mind. This is a reduction in growth, and it's only half of what the public, how it may affect the public. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Just one quick clarification. Because this is across the gross budget in all of these departments, it may be that a couple of these small departments didn't have much growth anyway, so you may be seeing a cutback, but the vast majority of them is precisely as you described. Alderman Chabot?
Thank you, Your Worship. And Alderman Hodges partially made my argument in that some departments, through the budget process, were more successful at increasing their budgets than other departments. Some of them actually remain flat. But for the most part, this is a reduction and an increase, not a cut in services. For most departments, one in particular that I can think of, there's a huge increase of which there isn't a cost recovery associated with the increase that we've already done in the past, let alone what we're anticipating for the future. At least no predictable revenue associated with the increase in level of service. So I was prepared to support reducing it to 4 million because, again, this is an across the board kind of a reduction that doesn't turn this into a Dutch auction. Either we support the direction that Council had previously given with the intent of trying to keep the tax increase to a minimum. I'm not likely going to support the 4 million, but I thought it was at least more in keeping with the intent of the motion. I still think we should be targeting the $8 million as was originally envisioned. I'll have to see in the close whether or not somebody is still intent on convincing me that I should support the 4 million. Ultimately, I'm more apt to support the 8 and no Dutch auction. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Anyone else on the amendment? On the amendment, Alderman Stevenson to close.
Well, Your Worship, I have difficulty with the idea of the picking and choosing. That's where my problem is. And so my motion to go to the 4 million was to go across the board, hoping that we would get, although there's no requirement to do that, hoping that I would get everyone to support the list as it is without the picking and choosing. But that's why I went with the 4 million, and I would be willing to support the 4 million across the board. I honestly don't know what I'm going to do when we start to go into each individual one. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Stevenson. And so again, on the amendment to change 8 million to 4 million, are we agreed? Any opposed? Call the roll, please.
Alderman Chabot.
No.
Alderman Collier.
Yes.
Alderman DeMong.
No.
Alderman Farrell.
Yes.
Alderman Hodges.
No.
Alderman Jones.
Yes.
Alderman Keating.
No.
Alderman Lowe.
Yes.
Alderman McLeod.
Yes.
Alderman Marr.
No.
Alderman Pincott.
Yes.
Alderman Pootmans.
No.
Alderman Stevenson.
Yes.
Alderman Carra.
No.
Mayor Nenshi.
Yes.
Carried.
So now we have a main motion, which is to adopt the further adjustments to the city operating budget with net operating budget reductions totaling $4 million. And when we call it, I will call the ones that have been outlined separately from the rest. So we're going to be here for a little while. Alderman Lowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm assuming then, Mr. Tobert, that we just have each of these numbers as we go down. And given that council is elected to do this, Your Worship, I think we have little choice but to do them line by line, each one. And that I think members of council may wish to understand from the individual general managers if they can give us any suggestion of what the impact will be in 2012 and then moving forward. With respect to Alderman Hodges' contention that this simply reflects growth, that's not true in all cases, because we took the growth out of virtually all departments initially. We added some back, transit being one, and you know, Your Worship, I think we're failing Calgarians if council does not understand exactly what they're doing before they put their hands up for it. That's where the responsibility ends up lying. For me, it'll be easy, Your Worship. I'll just simply vote no on every one of them. Thank you, Your Worship.
So, Your Worship, on a point of procedure, we have just voted for a $4 million cut across the board, so there's no calling them individually. No.
This is a toughie, Alderman Collier.
It would be contrary.
We have, in fact, voted for an amendment to look at a $4 million, to look at the budget programs outlined in Attachment 1 with net operating budget reductions totaling $4 million. You are correct that, in fact, we should call the whole thing together because if we call them line by line, they will not total $4 million.
Right.
However, this is the big however. Again, I don't want procedure to get in the way of the decision that council wants to make. And so if it is the will of council to look at certain ones separately or to look at all of them separately, I'll figure out a procedural way for us to do that. Now, all of that said, I will ask Mr. Tobert to respond for a second on one of the points that Alderman Lowe raised. I heard you say, I think, that neither you nor your general managers can really respond as to what the impact of this is because you don't know where the money would come from yet.
Your Worship, I don't understand at this point in time what the impact would be. We've had extensive discussions amongst myself and the general managers about this very point. We said This is a Faustian bargain between trying to get something to you in time to have an impact on the 11 budget, but still have a focus on 12 to 14. That's the Faustian bargain I was attempting to strike with you. If you intend to go through each one of these individually, I believe we are not in a position to tell you what the impact would be. As I said earlier, the instructions I intended to give to management was, to the best of your ability, manage a slightly reduced budget by amount equal to roughly half of 1%. That's the challenge. And so I was expecting managers to be able to accommodate, by and large, all of their intended service delivery, albeit with a slightly reduced amount of resources to do it. And I understand the long-term implications, but this was an attempt to meet Council's needs for a further budget reduction. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Mr. Tobert. I'm turning to you, Madam Clerk, because this is what you're so very good at. Do you have a way for us out of this morass?
Your Worship, really, what you have right now was an amendment to the recommendation. You haven't moved to delete anything yet. What you've done is reduce the recommendation from administration from $8 million to $4 million. So you have not adopted a reduction of $4 million until you adopt recommendation 1.
Correct. Correct. But is your opinion that we can take them separately, given that it's not in the main motion?
I would suggest to you that the intent of voting on them separately isn't to defeat each and every one of them. If you do, you are adding back up to that $4 million, because the intent now is still $4 million overall.
I see your point. I see your point. So what Madam Clerk is pointing out is that the way the motion is currently worded, we would, if, for example, we were to delete animal and bylaw services, $78,000. Well, the total still needs to add up to $4 million, which means that that $78,000 would then go into all of the other ones. And unfortunately, and I should have noticed this before, even when Alderman Marr first asked to call them separately, we would have been in the same situation, except it would have had to add up to $8 million. So, what I'm going to suggest is that we take the whole thing as one motion on the $4 million. Should it pass, it passes. And the allocation will be as in here, half of each number.
Thank you.
Okay? If it fails, then I will accept any motions arising at that time if people would like to put forth a motion for cuts to departments not including their favorite ones. Okay? So what I'm saying to you now is if you would like to put forth that motion, start scribbling it out now just in case this fails. If it passes, we'll be done with it. And then we will move on. Okay? Everyone all right with that? Okay. So, Alderman Farrell on the motion as amended.
Thank you. Well, we talk a lot about growth, but I think there's a mistaken assumption that a growth in our budget has meant a growth in services. In fact, the growth in our budget is trying to keep up with the growth in our city. And we've added the population of Saskatoon in the last 10 years. So we have not been keeping up with the services that we've provided to Calgarians, and Calgarians have been very clear that they want more services, not less. So I think we need to understand how, of course, growth pays for itself, which it doesn't. But I just find this approach ham-fisted, and I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
On the motion as amended, Alderman Hodges?
Well, Your Worship, I don't have a magic crystal ball, but I knew we were going to end up here at this very point.
I kind of did too, Alderman Hodges.
I know. Council, you either want to get a handle on the operating budget, and whatever handle that is okay with me, or you don't. If you want to let things go as they were at the end of November, then you defeat the motion on the floor, and they'll go. And they'll be higher next year, and higher in 2013, and higher in 2014. This is a growth business, unless you choose to get control. So one way to get control is start slowing down the rate of growth in the five big departments, or 6 big departments, one of whom, Alderman Marr's favorite, we've exempted. So now, quickly, we're down to really 4 major departments. And short of raiding the fiscal stability reserve, this is a challenge you face with growing budgets. I would suggest, however, on the comment that the city has not kept up with growth, I believe that by and large we have. Look at the number of staff you have now in the planning and building department as compared to 3 or 4 years ago. You have new staff. Now, some are on limited term, some are regulars, and they have different employment status. But nevertheless, the 3 years ago, 4 years ago, nobody talked about 14,000 city employees. Now we do. So there has been growth in many departments, which has helped to keep up with growth and keep up with services. So I suggest we give the administration a signal that we're serious about controlling budget growth, or we're not.
Oh, thanks, Alderman Hodges. Alderman Marr, you've already spoken on the main motion, but it's still the same motion. Alderman Marr, it's just been amended. Okay, I'll allow it just because you're giving me the puppy dog face.
Your Worship, the reason why I'm on my feet again is that I was okay with the $8 million. I was okay with the fact that we were going to make some serious cuts, but the ones that I was really, really concerned about is fire. And if you could indulge me to ask Dr. Hargesheimer as to specifically what that $830,000 is going to look like. Because I think it's firefighters. I think it's firefighters in Sage Hill, and I think it's firefighters in what's it called? Skyview. No, not Skyview. So maybe you could... Saddle Ridge. That's my guess. Now it's 400,000.
Dr. Hargesheimer, are you prepared to answer that?
Yes, Your Worship. I think that City Manager Tobert answered the question in that we're trying to buy time in 2011 to make some strategic changes in how we do business in 12 to 14. What this reduction means in community services and protective services, specifically in the fire department, is that we may be putting firefighters into Saddle Ridge 2 months later than we originally anticipated. However, the material point here is that works in 2011. It does not work in 2012 because they need a paycheck for 12 months, not for 12 months less 2. And so the levers that we pull in 2011 may be quite different than the ones we must pull in 12 to 14 because it will not be possible to just simply defer when something becomes a base full-year cost.
And I don't suppose we can ask the gods of fire just not to have a fire during that time period when it's not convenient for us. We can ask. We can ask. And then
I'll take a notice of motion for that for next week.
And my other concern, again, is the public safety communications. Now, we're now at reducing it by $80,000. Could you speak to that?
Dr. Hargesheimer?
Well, Your Worship, we know that in the PSC we are struggling with volume. We're struggling with 911 calls from cell phones and all of those things that are compounding. It's not just growth in the population, it's growth in technology that results in a lot of pressure. We're putting in increased, as you know, sitting on the Police Commission, we're putting in additional training, quality assurance, all of those things, and we will be coming forward in 12 to 14, likely with the request for additional resources to manage that situation. Again, in the short term, can we manage an $80,000 reduction in PSC? Of course, but the long-term question, 12 to 14, is the more material one.
No, and I appreciate that. Council, this is not about cuts to growth. This is about the potential of saving people's lives. That's the bottom line. I will take my seat happily if we can preserve the fire portion and the public safety portion. Everything else, I'm good to go.
Alderman MacLeod on the main motion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to go back to the growth comments. It seems to me that there's growth in budget that can be appropriate and growth that's inappropriate. And what I'm hearing from some of my colleagues is that all growth is inappropriate. If we want to keep our budget level or down, then we're going to have to cut growth. And I think, as we just heard with the firefighters, some of it is absolutely good. Growth is not all bad. And I get back to my earlier statement that understanding the impact of some of these cuts is important to me, and I'm not prepared to support a motion where I don't know what the ripple effect is of it.
Thank you, Alderman MacLeod. Alderman Moore.
Mayor Nenshi.
Just one brief thing, which is that I initially moved this because I thought that looking for a 0.5% cut across the board in every department was a reasonable and prudent thing to do. I think that it starts us off on starting to think, as I've said many times, about transforming and reinventing the way we do services. Now, at that time, I was willing to exempt some of the services from this. However, given the way that this is written, we are now looking at 1/2 of 1/2 of 1%. Even less than that, as a matter of fact. We're looking at about 1/5 of 1%. And I would suggest that if we really, as a council, want to get engaged in the cumulative impact of 1/5 of 1%, then we should set aside 2 to 3 weeks for budget deliberations next year. Because I really do believe that in an organization this side, if we're not nimble and flexible enough to be able to find 1/5 of 1% without impacting anybody, frankly, without anybody noticing, then we have a big problem in terms of the flexibility we built into this organization. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'll support the recommendation as written.
Thank you, Mayor Nenshi. Is everyone clear on the question? On the motion? Okay, we're going to go number 1 first. To adopt further adjustments to the operating budget. I have a request for a recorded vote. On number 1, as amended only.
On the recorded vote, Mayor Nenshi for, Alderman Hodges for, Alderman Farrell against, Alderman Carra for, Alderman Collier-Cart for, Alderman Chabot against, Alder Demong for, Alderman MacLeod against, Alderman Lowe against, Alderman Pootmans for, Alderman Keating for, Alderman Stevenson for, Alderman Jones for, Alderman Pincott against, Deputy Mayor Marr for. It's carried, Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. On the second question, to direct administration to return to council no later than 2011, February 14th. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Are there any opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
We next have Report 2010-76, which has to do with some motions arising from our budget deliberations last week, and we have a recommendation to receive this report and the attachments for information. Do I have someone moving that? Alderman Collier-Cart, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Pincott, thank you. Alderman Hodges.
It's a question I didn't get a chance to ask Dr. Hargesheimer earlier. Dr. Hargesheimer, number 2 on the left-hand column is the event stimulus program, as it's called.
Yes.
Which is, I can see to be something that we've approved in just the last few years and has a potential, I hate to use this word, Alderman MacLeod, yes, it has the potential for growth. I would say an unlimited potential for growth, but never mind that comment. Do you recall what was expended in it in 2009 or 2010?
Alderman Hodges, I will allow the question because it's interesting, but I will point out that we actually passed that one at budget hearing, so it's not, in fact, in front of us right now. But, you know, if Dr. Hargesheimer has the numbers and would like to share them.
Yes, I do. So in 2010, we were supposed to have $400,000. In 2011, $500,000. And because the jury selection and all of those things, in order to make a very good determination on where this funding should be spent, took a while to set up. The 2010 funding will carry over and be fully expended. The jury is at this moment selecting all of the projects for the $400,000, and those will be used then in 2011. And so it's not unreasonable for the program to fund festivals in 2012 with the 2011 funding. It's one-time funding, so it can be carried forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hargesheimer. Thanks, Dr. Hargesheimer. Anyone else on this motion? Alderman Chabot.
Your Worship, there's direction associated with these motions arising, and I'm just wondering why 2 is even included in these, because this is just for information insofar as what Council has approved.
So my understanding, Alderman Chabot, the reason 2 is included is because it had been an omnibus motion at the previous meeting, so they're just trying to be complete. 2 we passed. 1, 3, and 4 we referred to this meeting. So accepting these reports, accepting the attachments for information, because the attachments have timelines in them, means that we're telling administration to go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Well, Your Worship, I'm not arguing that it was an omnibus motion, but because the other operative components within this include some work, and this one doesn't. And that's why I'm wondering why it's included and why it wasn't considered to be taken out, even though it was moved as an omnibus motion, Your Worship.
Yeah, if you notice right underneath, it says recommendation 2 was approved, so 2 is done. They're just trying to refer us back to what we voted on before. So 2 was approved at our budget meetings, so it's irrelevant to the discussion. It's just there for completeness. And we're talking today about 1, 3, 4, and 5.
So why is 5 not included in administration's recommendations then, Your Worship?
It is. They just the attachments are just renumbered. So when you look at the attachments, they refer to items 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, sorry. I must have missed that. Thank you.
Attachment 4 is about communications and customer service relating to number 5 in the original motion.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for that clarification, Your Worship.
No problem. Mr. Tobert, I have a question for you before we call the question, which is just about the costs that are in each of these reports. As you know, I found some of those costs a bit surprising, but that's not my question. My question is, do you have the money? Are you asking us for more money today?
Your Worship, I believe the discussion at budget was, please tell us the costs, and so that's why it was included. Suffice it to say that I believe all of this can be absorbed within the business's existing budgets without asking Council for additional spending.
Thanks, Mr. Tobert. Any other discussion on this one? Very well then, on the motion to receive the report and the attachments for information, which has the effect of having the work done and the attachments done. Alderman Collier-Cart, did you want to close before I? Thanks, Alderman Collier-Cart. So on the motion then, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. All right then. What happened to my agenda? Thank you. We'll pull up FCS 2010-27, Reserve for Future Capital, Amendment for Additional Corporate Accommodation Funding Sources. Alderman Lowe.
Your Worship, I'll move the there are 3 Finance and Corporate Services reports in here. I'll move the recommendations on all 3. Close on them individually if necessary.
I didn't hear the very last thing you said, Alderman Lowe.
Said I'll close on them individually if required.
Heard ya. Okay. And Alderman Collier-Cart, you're seconding? Okay, very well then. So we now have all three of these reports in front of us, 27, 28, and 29. Alderman Hodges.
Yes, what I didn't pick up out of one of the reports, and Your Worship and members of council, and if it's here, then you can please identify which page it would be in, is as this money is transferred to this reserve for future capital, what budgets are they coming out of which will cause whatever those programs were, however else they were funded, to now not be funded?
I had the same question, Mr. Stevens.
None, Your Worship. What this is this, for the first time, we now have third-party revenue being received based upon market rent. And as a portion of every market rent, there's a life cycle maintenance component. However, the life cycle maintenance component might not need to be spent in the year the revenue is received. So if you have a good building and you receive money early on, you might not need to make those repairs in that year. So you push the money, you keep it in a reserve for future costs that you may incur. That's all that's happening here. So there is no current effect, or there's not a program that will go underfunded or less funded as a result of the policy that's being applied here.
Okay, hopefully that's how it works out. Thank you. Thank you, Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Mr. Stevens, could you just give us a sense of what percentage of the rents are these capital are for capital projects? Do you have any idea, or does it vary?
Your Worship, I don't have a percentage, but what I can tell you is at the end of this year, we anticipate approximately $2.5 million going into the reserve. And I apologize, I haven't calculated it as a percentage, but it's about.
But what would our total revenues be, roughly?
On these third-party leases, because that's the source of revenue, it would just be a guess. I wouldn't even venture a guess, Your Worship, but I can get that to you. I just don't have.
It's not 50%.
Oh no!
It's a small number.
No, we are doing some. This is just amount. These are amounts where you've got some items where the revenue is coming in where you don't actually need to spend the money this year, but you will need to spend it in subsequent years.
Thanks very much, Mr. Stevens. Other comment, questions, debate on any of these three reports? Do you want to close on 27 then, Alderman Lowe?
Your Worship, I think your question was on any of these reports. I'd be pleased to close on all three at this moment.
Done. We will vote on them separately, though. On report number 27 and the recommendations included, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. On report 28 and the recommendations, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. And on number 29, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. I think, Alderman Hodges, did you have a motion to add a personnel item in camera?
No, Your Worship. After I spoke to you, I briefly spoke with Mr. Stevens, and I'm good. But hopefully, if a report is needed on that item, it can come back in January.
Very well, then. The next items on our agenda are, if I'm not missing anything, are all in-camera items. We have a number of appointments as well as a discussion around a transfer of land. Did I miss one, Alderman Fincott? Yes. In camera. I should just say, Alderman Collier-Cart, before we take the motion, it is an issue on land having to do with the proposed Northwest Recreation Centre. And I've got a motion from Alderman Collier-Cart to move now in camera. Alderman Hodges seconding. Are we agreed? Very well. We'll be back shortly. Opposed? Sorry. Any opposed? Okay. We're back. Alderman Hodges.
Move that we rise and report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Alderman Hodges. That's the one that doesn't need a seconder, right? So are we agreed?
Agreed.
Very well. All right, then. Let us go through some of these. Alderman Pincott on AC 2010-86.
Thank you. AC 10-2086, 2010 City Manager's Corporate Risk Report. I'll move that Council receive the report for information.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Lowe. Are we agreed? Any opposed? All right. On the land item re the Northwest Rec Centre, Alderman Lowe.
Thank you, Your Worship. One, that administration recommendations contained in report LAS 2010-82 be adopted. And number two, that the recommendations, report, and attachments remain confidential following the in-camera discussion pursuant to sections 23(1)B, 24(1)A, 24(1)G, and 25(1)B of the Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act until the transaction is concluded, Your Worship.
A second.
Thank you. Alderman Chabot has seconded that. On that, are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well. N 2010-23, appointment to the Airport Authority. Alderman Stevenson.
Thank you. I move that Council appoint Darshan Cayley as Director, representing the City of Calgary to the Airport Authority, Calgary, for a 4-year term to expire 2014 October. And secondly, that the verbal report and discussions remain confidential under Sections 17(1) and 19 of the Freedom of Information and Protection Privacy Act.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well. N 2010-18, appointments to the Access Calgary Eligibility Board. Alderman McLeod.
Thank you, Your Worship. That Council I move that Council appoint Geraldine Lang and Kowabana Oduru, and I can't pronounce the last name. To the Access Calgary Eligibility Appeal Board for completion of 1-year terms expiring 2011 October, and keep the attachment confidential under Section 17(1) of the Freedom of Information and Privacy Protection Act after Council arises and reports on the matter.
Thanks. And Alderman Farrell, I think, seconded that. Thank you. Are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. 25, appointment to the Public Library Board. Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. That Council table to its next meeting in January 2011.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thanks, Alderman Chabot. On the motion to table this one, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Any opposed? Carried. Appointment to the Council Compensation Review Committee. Alderman Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. That Council appoint Mike Rozanoff as a Labour representative to the Council Compensation Review Committee for a term to expire upon acceptance of the committee's final report to Council, and that the report and resumes and discussions remain confidential under Section 17(1) and 19 of the Freedom of Information Privacy Act.
Thanks, and Alderman Stevenson is seconding. On that one, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Any opposed? Alderman Hodges is opposed. Carried. Next, we have 2010-19 Calgary Arts Development Authority resignation and appointments. Alderman Pincott.
Thank you. For CADA, I move that Council 1 accept the resignation of Alison McKenzie as Director of CADA, and that the Mayor thank her for her service. 2, that we confirm the appointment of Joe Ceci as Director of CADA for completion of a term to expire in 2011 May. And 3, the attachments remain confidential under Section 17(1) of Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act after Council. Well, there you go.
Thanks, Alderman Pincott. Alderman Pincott, you're 100% sure that the CC character is a person of high moral standing?
No,
I understand he's had
would,
some very sketchy past employment.
I'm afraid I would never, ever vouch for any of his moral qualities in the least.
Hi, Joe.
Thanks. I think Alderman Farrell is seconding. Are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well. Appointments to the 2011 Assessment Review Board. Alderman Chabot.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 recommendations. 1, that Council reappoint the existing members of the Assessment Review Board as per the attachment, and 2, to give 3 readings to bylaw number 59M 2010, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 25M 2010, establish assessment review boards relating to the appointment of persons to serve on the ARB for the 2011 calendar year.
Thanks, Alderman Chabot. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Stevenson seconding. Thank you. On this one, are we agreed? On the recommendations, are we agreed? Any opposed? All right, then on first reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. Second reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. Authorization for third reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? Very well then. Third reading of the bylaw, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Citizen appointments to the 2011 Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. Alderman Carra.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Council approve the attached list relating to the citizen appointments to serve on the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board for the 2011 calendar year. Should I read them, or is that not necessary?
Not necessary.
Well, I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Alderman Lowe, thank you. On this one, are we agreed? Any opposed?
Opposed.
Alderman Chabot is opposed. Carried. On the number 22, 2011 Business Revitalization Zones Boards of Directors, Alderman Marr.
Thank you, Your Worship. On N 2010-22, that Council, 1, confirm the appointments to the various Business Revitalization Zone Board of Directors for 2011 as per the attachment, and 2, that the retiring board members receive a letter of thanks from the Mayor for their past service. Yeah, you got to
How many of those do I got to sign?
Hundreds.
Thanks, handwritten. Alderman Farrell seconds that. Thank you. On these appointments, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. Police Commission, Alderman Collier-Cart.
Thank you, Your Worship. That Council consider the 2 shortlisted candidates as residents of the Calgary Police Commission for 2-year terms to expire 2012, November 12th. Subject to a satisfactory clearance of the Calgary Police Commission security checks and our interview, and that the verbal report and discussions remain confidential under Section 17(1) of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Alderman Collier-Cart. Alderman Marr, you're seconding. And there's some discussion on this one. Alderman Farrell.
Thank you. Well, as a continuance of our early morning discussion about gender and representation, this is one of our most important and most visible boards, and yet historically has been very male-dominated. Major strides made by Council to increase the ethnic diversity to represent Calgary, a modern Calgary. I think less successful in gender. So disappointed again that I was, once again, the only one to bring that up. I would have hoped that the movers of today's motion would have felt compelled to address this issue, but disappointed once again.
Thank you, Alderman Farrell. Alderman Marr, did you want to speak on this? Your light is on.
I would, just speaking about the diversity of that board, because of the 9 members right now, 5 of them are either visible ethnic minorities or women. So that is a fair amount of diversity, and certainly we want to try to encourage that as much as possible. But when we're talking about boards and organizations, we want to be able to focus not specifically whether or not they're a certain color or a certain religion or certain gender. We want to look at the overall governance and what the value is to the table. I'm certainly sympathetic and want to have as close of a representation that we can to the population of Calgary, and I think this board does that in an exemplary way. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Marr. Alderman Hodges was in on this. Alderman Collier-Cart, did you want to close? Closed. Very well then. On this motion, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. We then have Taxi and Limousine Advisory Committee, Alderman Demong.
I move that Council refers to Mayor Nenshi for discussion with the Chair of the Taxi, Limousine Advisory Committee.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Alderman Demong. Do we have a seconder?
Second. It's a thing of beauty.
Thanks, Alderman Hodges. Yeah, just end the meeting now. Run. Thanks, Alderman Hodges. On this motion of which I am so very excited, are we agreed? Any opposed? Carried. All right, that takes us to the end of our report from the in-camera items. Administrative inquiries, if any. Alderman Hodges?
If there are no inquiries, I'll move we adjourn, Your Worship.
All right, Alderman Jones, second. Are we agreed? And we are adjourned. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Oh, I forgot that here. I'll do it tomorrow.